Okay, guys, we're gonna get started. So if everybody can take their seat, and we're gonna get started on Senate Bill 381. Can I just before we start the hearing, I didn't watch the House hearing on the cross file, but my understanding is it got a little bit heated, and so I do feel a little compelled just to kind of say that at the outset to emphasize the importance that we place in this committee a high premium on the use of respectful language and fostering of an environment of dignity, understanding of all individuals. So I just feel like I want to just say that at the outset. And that said, Senator Carrozza, the floor is yours. We're going to do Senate Bill 381, and you've designated three folks to be part of your sponsor panel. One in person, Jonathan Alexandra, and we've got two virtual witnesses in the queue, which we'll take up next. So why don't you proceed with Senate Bill 381, and then we have one other panel of favorables, and then we'll go to a couple panels of unfavorables, and that'll be the chronology. So Senator Carrozza, Senate Bill 381.
So thank you, Mr. Chair. And for my witnesses, it'll just be my one, Mr. Alexander, and the two virtual for my witnesses out of respect for the chair and the members' time. For the record, Senator Mary Beth Carrozza, and I'm proud to represent Maryland's coast, which is all of Worcester County, Somerset County, and more than half of Wycomico County. And I do want to thank the chair and the members of my distinguished Senate Education, Energy, and Environment Committee for this opportunity to present Senate Bill 381, Fairness in Girls Sports Act. And I especially want to thank the chair and his staff for all their efforts to make this an informative, productive hearing, and to share with my colleagues, my intention with this bill hearing is to have a fair and kind hearing. This has not been heard in the Senate before, and I have full confidence that this committee understands why I am bringing forward the bill and the issue, which is simply to ensure fairness in girls' sports. SB 381 would simply ensure a level playing field for girls' sports where biological girls only, meaning born female, compete against biological girls born female. And the bill applies only to high school interscholastic and intramural junior varsity and varsity teams. I wholeheartedly believe this legislation is needed so female student athletes in Maryland can compete and earn scholarships, medals, and records on a fair field of play. My colleagues, this bill protects the hard-earned opportunities for girls to compete in organized high school sports fairly and to earn athletic awards and scholarships, just as I did as a student athlete. I played varsity high school tennis for 4 years at Stephen Decatur High School in the #1 singles girls position. By holding that position at the high school level, I then had opportunities to compete in regional and state tournaments that put me in the strongest position to be at least considered for a college athletic scholarship. As a result, I was offered and I accepted a tennis scholarship to play for the Catholic University of America, a scholarship that was a lifeline for helping my family pay for the cost of my college, where I played the #3 girls singles position and the #1 girls doubles position for all 4 years. And this is what I want to share my story, just as my other colleagues have shared their stories. Had one of the boys from the boys tennis team at my high school decided to play for my girls' high school tennis team, I would have been displaced from the #1 position on the girls' tennis team. Maybe could have played down the line, but I would have been displaced from the #1 position. And that would have denied me opportunities to compete in state and regional tournaments, which are the competitions that colleges follow when they are interested in recruiting student athletes and offering scholarships. Simply put, being displaced from my number one girls tennis singles position would have denied my opportunity to earn a college tennis scholarship. After spending years of practice, hours on end in the summer playing on the hard courts, running for miles, doing wind sprints, competing in local, state, and regional tournaments, and at the same time keeping my grade point average up so I would at least be considered for college. My story and the story of thousands of Maryland women who have played competitive sports in high school and earned a college athletic scholarship underscore the need for this legislation so these opportunities can continue in the future. Women fought too long and too hard to earn equal athletic opportunities. In the early 20th century, women began fighting for their own space in sports. And through tremendous effort and hard-won accomplishments, we were able to enact Title IX on June 23rd, 1972, which was designed to eliminate discrimination against girls and women in education and athletics. Before Title IX, only 294,000 girls played high school sports compared to 3.7 million boys. In 2019, 3.4 million girls participated in high school sports compared to 4.5 million boys. We have made immense progress, and we should not undermine that progress by allowing boys to take away the opportunities of girls by playing on girls' high school teams. We have acknowledged that there are differences between boys and girls. Boys have enjoyed the many benefits that come with participating in sports, from leadership, confidence, cooperation, conflict resolution, and so much more. We cannot deny these benefits to girls, especially when girls who participate in sports, they are also less likely to get breast cancer, suffer depression, remain in a violent relationship, do drugs, get pregnant, and are more likely to graduate than girls who do not play sports. In 2020, we celebrated the 100th anniversary of the ratification of the 19th Amendment, voting rights for women. And here we are today considering legislation to ensure that women have a fair playing field in sports. We should be allowed to preserve our history, keep our opportunities in girls' sports, and enjoy the many benefits that come from participating in sports. You will hear from Jonathan Alexander with the Maryland Family Institute, Evie Edwards, virtually from the Independent Council on Women's Sports, a former NCAA cross-country athlete, and Barbara Earhart, a former Division I basketball player, coach, and an Idaho representative who authored and sponsored the first of its kind legislation to protect opportunities for girls and women in sports. This legislation now has been adopted by 22 other states. And so again, I want to thank the chair and the members for allowing me to present the issue, to present the bill, and I have confidence that we as a committee together will go through and protect fairness in women's sports. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And if I could hold questions till after my witnesses.
Okay, so we'll do that. Mr. Alexander, we'll take you, and then we'll go to the two virtual witnesses, and then we'll open it up for questions. And everybody's on the time clock now, so everybody's got 2 minutes, okay?
Certainly.
Go on, sir.
Well, good afternoon, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. My name is Jonathan Alexander. I am an attorney and I'm legislative counsel for the Maryland Family Institute. And we are in strong support of Senate Bill 381. I'm raising a young girl here in Maryland, and as parents, we're often asked, what do I think? What do we think of her future? And we've already started planning for her future. Her grandparents, for her Christmas present, started her a little college fund. We're hopeful because she's entering into a world for women where there are so many specific opportunities, like the Women-Owned Small Business Fund in the state. We have the Maryland Women-Owned Small Business Program, and that's all business-minded allotments for women nationally and even in the state. even right before that stage, when it comes to scholarships, there's the American Association of University Women for Graduate Studies. There's the Amelia Earhart Fellowship for Aerospace, Science, and Engineering. There's allocations for scholarships for STEM programs. Well, this bill, the Fairness in Girls Sports, is just like any one of those programs. It's just like any one of those allotments, but it goes just a step closer. It's for high school girls. It's a recognition in the law of the tenderness and the fierceness of young girls, especially on the athletic field. It's exactly what 50 years of Title IX has done, but it applies it to the high school level and says that for the purposes of sports, what nearly 24 states have already done, it says for the purposes of sports in high school, our state's daughters will be graded and competing against girls and women just like them, and that our sports fields won't be used as experiments that tip the scales in favor of biological males who want to play in women's sports, and that our laws are going to be fair, equal, and given the proper recognition and protection and a level playing field for female athletes. That's the progress and really the optimistic outlook that Title IX had 50 years ago. It's a respect for young women that ought to be codified in law so that young women have an equal playing field in this state. And for these reasons, we ask that you pass Senate Bill 381 and that you give it a favorable report.
Okay, thank you. Let's go to the two virtual witnesses. We'll start with Evie Edwards, and you've got 2 minutes.
Good afternoon, Chair Feldman, Vice Chair Keegan, and members of the Senate. I'm Evie Edwards, a mother, registered Democrat, and I'm a former NCAA and current athlete. My family's lived in Maryland for over 40 years. I'm an executive member of the Independent Council on Women's Sport. We provide insight into how forcing females to compete against males will destroy athletic communities. I have 6 years worth of firsthand experiences racing several men in the female category in my sport of cycling. Today, more than 60 males are participating and taking podium spots from deserving females. If you're willing to prioritize the feelings of a few male athletes over the feelings of every girl in Maryland, then you must ask yourself why. There is undeniable evidence that male athletes have an immutable advantage over females. 4 Olympic world governing bodies of sports, entire countries have concluded that males should not compete in the female category. What you haven't heard are the stories of thousands of girls, coaches, and parents who have been silenced. They've been called names, they've been threatened, and they're told that use of language that clarifies their own sex isn't allowed. Humans cannot change their sex, and males have an advantage in sports. Women and girls experience damaging psychological effects when their grit, determination, and opportunities to be celebrated are exchanged for the unjust inclusion of just one male athlete. Adolescent girls are the most vulnerable population. NPR reported they suffer from depression and consider suicide far more than their LGBTQ peers combined. Girls who stand up for their right to fair sport are burdened with hate and intolerance. Athletic directors have silenced girls who speak up because the threat of being kicked out of a conference directly conflicts and affects male teams from being allowed to compete. The most celebrated professional trans-identified athletes are actually biological females who compete in the female category. They know that biology determines an athlete's success, not identity. Trans-identified athletes who are born female are welcomed into female categories. Trans-identified athletes born male should equally be welcomed into male categories. With SB 381, every athlete in Maryland is allowed to compete, but we must realize that bodies play sports, not identities. Thank you all very much.
Okay, thank you. We'll go to the other final sponsor panelist. And we've got Barbara Ahart from Illinois. So welcome, and you've got 2 minutes.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good committee. I appreciate your taking the time to hear this. It's incredibly important. I am Idaho State Representative Barbara Ehart. I was the first person to both sponsor and get passed this legislation that is now passed 24 states plus one. But I think the appeal that I bring is my past. I'm a former Division I women's basketball player at Idaho State. But more uniquely is I spent 15 years coaching Division I women's basketball at 4 fantastic institutions. You see, friends, Title IX changed my life. It actually did. And as I think about the many things that I'd love to share with you, given our short time, let me share this thought, because I've seen firsthand what Title IX has done. When I first started competing, people used to ask me when I was young, what it is I wanted to do when I grew up. And I literally tell people I wanted to play sports. And I was literally told that's not what girls do. And as I stuck with it and, through the years to see the changes and opportunities that I had because of Title IX, and now to see these opportunities are being rolled back. It doesn't matter if you add more sports. None of that matters if in the end we have males taking our spots. And so as you move forward, think on this. The other side is telling us it's about the humanity and the community and the inclusion. But folks, it's not about that at all, because the bottom line, when it comes down to the idea of sports, especially at the high school level, that it's about the competition is about winning. If it wasn't about winning, think on this. If it wasn't about winning, then players wouldn't get cut and coaches wouldn't get fired. And even though you may say, well, it's just that last place gal on the team that would probably get cut next year, she's a junior. No, every opportunity, every experience that we as women have to better ourselves actually matters. 95% of CEOs, it's a little bit older number, but participated in sports. You can't find a number equivalent to that on our male counterparts. Mr. Chairman, thank you so much, seriously, in committee for taking this up and allowing me a few minutes to speak. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So we've got any questions for either Senator Carrozza, the sponsor, or the three witnesses? Senator Washington.
Yes, thank you. And thank you, Senator Carrozza. I strongly supported, your right to be able to have a hearing and for the body to have this hearing. And obviously we don't agree, but I wanted to make sure that we have that hearing. I wanted to address your
Mary.
Sorry.
You put Senator Washington. Can you just put the mic a little closer?
There we go. I wanted to address your experience and your pondering that if you had been replaced by a boy, you would not have had the opportunity. And I just wanted to share some information and that currently the Maryland Public Schools Athletic Association clearly addresses the issue of, can boys pretend to be girls to infiltrate girls' JV or varsity spots in Maryland public schools? And they say no. So it's not a situation where there are girls and boys being swapped out. So that is just not the case under current guidelines. And according to their guidance further, they state that the participation of any particular student determination requires that the student must have a consistent gender identity different than the gender listed on the student's school records, and that the student's desires to participate in a particular activity in a manner consistent with his or her gender identity. And then further on the Olympic Committee, if a woman ceases to take, begins to take testosterone or is taking testosterone, they are not eligible. So it's not the case that boys are replacing girls. It's that our laws allow for the participation of all students, both in a coeducational and a unisex, according to their gender identity.
I'll just go back to how simple I think this bill is, and I tried to in my presentation. The bottom line is all this bill does is say, if you were born female, then you participate in girls' sports in high school. That's all this bill does. But Maryland law and if I can respond, but that contradicts. So Maryland law and the Pediatric Association, everyone identifies females in a way other than simply biological sex. And certainly people do undergo procedures to align their understanding of their sex to match their body. So it's not the case that that boys are playing girls' sports. It's just simply not the case. These are girls playing
girls' sports. And so for us to do what you say in the bill would counter what the pediatric associate, what doctors are saying, and also currently our law against discrimination based on the assignment of birth. So
Well,
that's the
So
problem here. Is
I
that this
think
bill
we have a
does
different
that.
understanding, and I'm not an attorney. And Mr. Alexander, if you wanted to address that, but I really have been trying, I have tried to keep this as narrow and clear as I can be. And the fact that all these other states have moved forward with it, clearly there's a pathway forward. So it may be a difference of opinion.
Yeah, that's what this is for, is just to share that, respect the view, but just want to lay out for ourselves and that we've weighed in on this and we have a policy around this, and this would be undoing that for not possibly, the implications would be not just for girls' sports. The implications could be carried into other sectors. So just that.
But
that's
my bill
concern.
doesn't deal with that.
It's the nose under the tent, but yes, so.
Okay.
Okay, that's all I have.
Okay, we're going to go to Senator Watson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Sorry, I'm late. This bill, I was glad to at least attempt to co-sponsor this bill because this bill makes sense. There's a reason why there are weight classes in boxing. And the reason why is because you don't want someone who is physically stronger than someone else being put in danger. There are reasons why the Athletic Commission considers doping an issue, because it will inherently, it will allow someone to have an inherent advantage in terms of strength and put someone at risk. Men genetically are just born with more strength. And to have them, no matter what they call themselves these days, to participate in a women's sport puts girls and women at risk. This is common sense. It doesn't say that you don't have the right to be who you are and all those things. This is not a discrimination bill. This is a safety bill to protect our young ladies. And I think this bill makes sense. And I think this committee needs to understand this is about safety of our girls.
And if I could respond to that, Senator Watson, I limited the number of witnesses in respect for the time to take, but there was, we did have a referee who testified to what he has seen over the years with the risks and what it has meant to girls' safety in sports.
Thank you for that. And I just wanted to say that I've talked to many members in my own community who absolutely support this bill and believe it just makes sense from a safety perspective. And for those who oppose it, that's nice until it's your daughter that gets harmed competing in one of these sports. Thank you.
Okay, any additional questions for the sponsor or for the panel, sponsor panel? Okay, seeing none, we have 3 additional witnesses signed up favorable. I don't know if they're here, but Brigida Mollican, Melissa Eidelman, and Lori Halverson.
I know Brigida and Laurie will not be
Brigida.
testifying, and that concludes.
Okay. Okay, that concludes the proponent's testimony. We're going to next move to panels of unfavorable, and we'll call them up in this order. Lee Blinder, Isla Hurley, Jonathan Tuttle. We have 5 seats. I'm going to call 5 names: Mara Babb and Sharon Hill. So I called 5 names. We've got 5 seats. Hold on a second. See if we got the 5. Okay. Okay, why don't we start with Lee Blinder. You're going to lead off, and again, each of you are on the clock 2 minutes. So Lee Blinder, you are first.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon, Honorable Chair, Vice Chair, and the esteemed committee. My name is Lee Blinder. I use they, them pronouns, and I'm a very proud transgender public school graduate. I am the Executive Director of Trans Maryland. I am also the Chair of the Maryland Commission on LGBTQIA+ Affairs. I'm here today on behalf of Trans Maryland in strong opposition to SB 381. We are and continue to be deeply embarrassed to see Maryland legislators who are bullying young trans girls today with this discriminatory legislation. You can pick on trans adults, but please leave trans minors alone. First, I'll address my comments to any trans or intersex girls who are in the room or who are watching. We want you to know that we find this legislation targeting you to be a misunderstanding of science and biology, and it is an openly bigoted act against girls like yourselves who just want to have fun by playing and enjoying women's sports. Returning my commentary to the committee, the American Medical Association, the leading medical association in the country, submitted a friend of the court brief in 2022 that stated, and I quote, "In order for transgender females to live their lives fully in accordance with their gender identity, they must be able to publicly identify and compete as female athletes. Eugenics is the framework that propagates the creation of legislation such as SB 381. Plainly, this bill seeks to attack the involvement of transgender and intersex girls in sports. This bill is not only targeting young trans girls, but specifically Black and brown, trans and intersex girls through a racialized gender policing. The beauty of competition and participation in competition has a long history of being limited by those who are seeking to codify their biases. It is particularly shameful when adults in Maryland attempt to perpetrate this on our youth, and we cannot and will not allow this in Maryland. For these reasons, we urge an unfavorable report. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Why don't we'll pass it down the mic and first tell us who you are, and everybody's got, again, 2 minutes, so.
Thank you. My name is Ayla Hurley, and I've resided in Maryland my entire life. Supporters of this bill say that over and over that it is not about trans people, but by narrowing the scope to biological sex, it inherently will unfairly impact trans people, which is precisely what supporters of this bill are hoping for. It's obtusely veiled transphobia under the guise of protecting girls at the expense of our most vulnerable girls. Those opposing this bill are those who would have been directly affected by it as kids, who are raising trans athletes, and professionals providing widely accepted recommendations from the top medical and psychological associations in our country. In my time as a volunteer counselor for the largest queer-focused youth crisis center in the US, I know deeply how bills like this directly contribute to trans youth struggling with their mental health. I have conversed with people as young as 11 who know that they are different and whose only wish is to be accepted as they are. Instead, adults in their lives, on TV and in government, suddenly accuse them of being malicious predators when finding out that their gender isn't the sex they were assigned at birth. I've talked kids off bridges. I've talked them out of the pills in the cabinet. I've talked them into moving the knife away from their wrist. How would it feel to go on a walk right now? We can keep talking. I'm here for you. May you never have to have that conversation, but roughly half of transgender and non-binary youth considered suicide in the last year, according to the Trevor Project's 2023 National Mental Health Survey. These bills tell them that they're malicious actors simply for trying to be themselves. Trans kids just want to be kids, like all of their peers. Youth sports are supposed to be a place to learn the values of teamwork and community. Without an affirming community of support, according to a study by Ryan et al. In 2009, transgender and non-binary youth are 8 times more likely to report attempting suicide. The disturbing thought that the senators who introduced this bill care more about their flawed understanding of sex and gender than that those kids might try to kill themselves is upsetting on a deep level. Let all kids be kids. Please do not pass this blatantly discriminatory bill. Thank you.
Okay, let's continue down the aisle. And again, tell us who you are.
Mr. Chair, committee members, I am Jonathan Tuttle, a volunteer advocate and endurance runner. In September, I completed my first half marathon. This bill is inevitably accompanied by discussions of muscle density and testosterone levels, and the argument that bodies born male have an irrefutable physiological advantage against others. But many cisgender athletes also have atypical height or a very wide arm span. About 10% of women have polycystic ovarian syndrome, which results in elevated testosterone levels. Now, all of these things could be said to confer an athletic advantage, but none of these things are mentioned in Senator Carrozza's bill. In fact, the only thing that is mentioned is biological sex. sex at birth. It takes no consideration of a trans girl who is, for example, 4'11" and very petite. That girl would probably be below average height and weight for her girls' sports team. So why would this bill want to separate that girl from her athletic community? It's because this bill was never about fairness in sports. This bill is about telling trans people they are not welcome in their own communities. This bill is about fear. It seeks to create a statute that isolates trans people, that tells them where they can go and whom they may associate with, and is reminiscent of some of the very worst transgressions in our country's history. And a federal judge agrees with me. This law was passed almost word for word in Idaho in 2020. It was enjoined almost immediately and has been blocked ever since on the grounds that it imperils the 14th Amendment right of its plaintiff. I urge the committee to rise against the bigotry embodied in this bill. Please vote on favorable. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next. Pull that
Thank
up.
you. Good afternoon, Chair Feldman, Vice Chair Kagan, and members of the Education, Energy, and Environment Committee. My name is Mara Babb, and I am a student from Anne Arundel County. On behalf of the Chesapeake Regional Association of Student Councils, CRASC, and the CRASC Legislative Department, including Noor Chowdhury, Julian Holloman, and Subhashi Pradhan, I am testifying in opposition to SB 381. The proposal set forth by this bill bears the weight of division rather than the promise of fairness. By mandating the strict segregation of sports teams based on biological sex, this bill reinforces the false premise that women are inherently inferior to men in athletic competition. This ignorant belief not only undermines the accomplishments and potential of female athletes, but also serves to limit their opportunities for growth and advancement in the sporting world. Additionally, this inhibits male athletes in sports like gymnastics, where near half of the nationally ranked participants are men, despite the sport being predominantly broadcasted with the focus on female competitors. Instilling such ideologies during the formative years of students proves detrimental to both young women and men alike. It leads female students to believe that they are less capable than males, fostering feelings of inadequacy. Simultaneously, it ingrains in male students the tendency to undermine their female peers, perpetuating harmful gender biases that extend beyond the realm of athletics and into various aspects of life, including academics and professional pursuits, hindering societal progress towards true gender equality. Furthermore, this bill especially targets transgender students. Despite recent progress in Maryland schools towards creating inclusive environments that celebrate students' diverse identities, this bill threatens to reverse this progress by supporting outdated and exclusionary practices that will isolate and marginalize transgender youth. By drawing stark lines based solely on biology, this bill highlights a binary view of gender that fails to acknowledge the nuanced realities of human identity. As advocates for inclusivity and equality, it is essential to oppose this bill and instead promote acceptance, respect, and equal opportunities for all students in athletics and beyond. Accordingly, CRASC respects the unfavorable report on SB 381.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we'll go to our final witness of this panel. And again, tell us who you are, and you've got 2 minutes.
Hello, Chairperson Feldman, Vice Chairperson Kagan, committee members and guests. My name is Sharon Hill. I'm here to oppose Senate Bill 381. I have 2 children. One identifies as female, one identifies as transgender. Both attended Montgomery County Public Schools. Interscholastic and intramural sports need to be available to all students. Requiring athletic teams to be based on biological sex is blatantly discriminatory, damaging to children's mental health, and incredibly demeaning to their self-esteem. Transgender children are not a problem. They're simply children who want to be accepted, encouraged to do their best in life, academics, and sports. Transgender people have participated in sports a long, long time. The NCAA and the International Olympic Committee have allowed transgender athletes to participate on sports teams aligned with how they identify since the year 2004. The American Psychological Association states that there is no evidence to support claims that allowing transgender student athletes to play on the team that fits their gender identity would impact the fairness of the sport. They vary in their athletic ability just the same as all students. Note that in February 2021, the National Coalition for Women and Girls in Education issued a statement supporting transgender and non-binary students' full and equal participation in all educational programs and activities, including sports. Evidence shows that adolescents who participate in sports have better grades, higher occupational aspirations, and more self-esteem. All youth deserve to have complete access to sports. Banning transgender individuals from participating on teams based on their identity is the same as banning them from the sport entirely, since their identity is how they exist in the world. Transgender youth suffer bullying, rejection, discrimination in all areas of their lives, including getting medical care. Sports participation helps to mitigate some of this harm. Gender policing harms everyone. Let's promote inclusive, supportive policies. Vote no to SB 381. Thank you.
Okay, we're going to start with Senator Gallion, and then we'll go to Senator Watson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And, you know, at the beginning of this hearing, the chairman called for civility. I appreciate the sponsor panel for being very civil. And it's kind of disappointing that this panel has used the word bigoted a couple times, also ignorant. So I guess so much for tolerance if you disagree, I guess. With that, I have a question. I have 4 daughters that are right now in youth sports. They're too young to be at middle or high school level. But you know, they may one day move on to high school and decide to play sports there. So, you know, for them to compete against folks that are born, you know, biological males, and have a different genetic makeup, as my fellow senator mentioned about the safety issues, you know, most are, you know, bigger, stronger, faster. With that being said, in this committee, we talk a lot about fairness and inclusion. Where is the fairness for those girls, my girls, that could be competing in a situation similar to the young ladies that were defeated by Leah Thomas in swimming not that long ago? Where is the fairness for them?
Directed to anybody specific? We don't need 5 answers. If you don't mind, somebody could take the lead on that.
I think I really appreciate, you know, the intention behind your question. You're interested in protecting your children like many parents are. We're interested in protecting trans children. So we have the same goal, to protect children. And the reality is that transgender children are going to be your classmates of the children that you're going, you know, that you're raising. And so what we really hope is that transgender people, your children's classmates, will be warmly accepted and have a place in society. And I understand that when people are different, it can be scary, right? We don't understand what that means. We don't understand the ramifications for our families and for our society. And I encourage, you to know trans people like myself, to talk to trans people in your community, get to know them as people. And when you do, it's possible to see us in the full way that we are in our society, to interact with us, and to want us to be by your side on the athletic field, in our state house, in our government, in all areas of life.
Thank you for that answer. And it's important. I have a saying that we hear a lot: be kind every time. Be kind. We try. Most people that are my colleagues here are great examples of that. We try to be kind, even if you have differences in opinion or whatever. But still, that doesn't answer where's the fairness for a biological female that is at a disadvantage. I used the Leah Thomas swimming example. Where is the fairness come in for those girls?
Well, Leah Thomas has failed to achieve at most of her meets. Her success rate is not stellar, and we're not seeing trans girls dominating in sports in Maryland. It's simply not happening. And I understand that folks are feeling worried that this might happen because we're picking out individual cases where one trans woman or trans girl has achieved just like cisgender girls achieve in their sport. I have played women's sports, and I've run into women who are twice my size, tripped over them, been shoved, all of those things. Those are cisgender girls who were born, in your words, a biological woman. Some girls are big. Sometimes playing girl sports, you get hurt. That happens. It's okay.
Okay, Senator Watson.
I find this argument fascinating, and the silence you hear in this committee, I really want you to believe that silence does not mean consent. There's a reason why when you go golfing, there are men's tees and women's tees, because men are inherently stronger. It is what it is. Whether you like it or not, or willing to accept it, that is the fact. You know, I find it very disturbing that you would sit up here and talk about black and brown race, kind of some kind of race mongering type of scenario. That doesn't wash with me at all. I don't think any of you are willing to stand up here and wrestle me right now, because I'll take you down, because I am stronger than you guys. It is what it is. And you can look crazy, that's okay. But it's about fairness. It literally is about fairness. And my only question for you all, I got so many notes on this paper because literally what I've heard is quite disturbing. You know, you talked about what's dangerous. What's dangerous and what's unfair is allowing a child to make a decision to undergo a sex change that's non-reversible when they're a child. That's what's dangerous. And now we have to live with these consequences. And now you want to change the rules of the game and put them at risk. That's unfair, in my opinion. You know, and I'm one of the few people who will speak up about this because I hear this all the time. Men talking about the fear of their young girls competing in sports in high school. They're worried. So my question is, would any of you support a third class, not a male sport, female sport, a transgender sport? And if not, why not?
If I could answer your question, Senator Watson, the bill does address not only boys teams, girls teams, but also co-educational teams. So I believe it would give the opportunity for students to participate in sports if they combine both male, female, non-binary students all into one team. But I encourage you to look at the alternate perspective of the fairness for women participating in sports that are male dominated. For example, wrestling. At my high school a couple of years ago, it was a completely male team. We had one female competitor, and she was competing in her weight class against all men. And she went to states, and she was able to compete at states and won her weight class despite competing against men. If that doesn't show that there is not an inherent benefit of women over men as far as biologically, I don't know what will. Because women, although they may have some physical disadvantages in some areas of sports, when it comes to wrestling, you're competing in a weight class against men who will be of the same weight biologically. And women have shown, at least in my high school, that regardless of your gender, you are still able to compete. And I think that women should be able to compete in male-dominated sports, such as wrestling or football, ice hockey, without it being solely based on what your sex is. Thank you.
I'd like you to comment on it because I think some of you talked about some studies and research. Men are physically stronger than women who have, on average, less total muscle mass, both in absolute terms and relative in total body mass. Greater muscle mass of men is a result of testosterone-induced muscular hypertrophy. What research have you found that says that a male who has undergone a transgender male, if I'm using the terms correctly, that participates in a women's sport somehow has a reduced level of strength and is now somehow at par with the young girls that they're competing against?
I'm sorry, do you mean a transgender woman who is participating?
I don't know
on
the
a women's
terms.
team?
I asked for your indulgence on that.
Okay, so
But
you
a
mean,
male who is now a female,
okay,
who is now competing against females, if they undergo all the hormone therapies and all that, does that somehow reduce their level of strength?
it does reduce their level of testosterone, yes.
But we do know in the case of the swimmer we talked about, there were some who had not taken hormone therapy and were able to defeat this champion. Even though you claim that she wasn't as good as she was very good until she had to swim against athletes who were formerly boys.
Okay, I mean, nobody has to, I mean. there's
Isn't
some
that
comment. There's
I
some
can Google it.
commentary. Okay, we could do some Google searches on our own. Okay, Senator Lewis Young, you're next, and then we'll go to Senator Washington, and then we do have some additional witnesses, so we could maybe move to the next panel.
Thank you very much. I'm really conflicted on this issue, and I'm hoping you all can help me. I think some of you know me. I've sat in hearings with you supporting bills. I have a record of supporting LGBTQ plus issues, but I'm also a parent of a daughter that was one of the most competitive swimmers in the state of Maryland. And I'm going to go back to the swimming analogy. So if you're familiar with swimming, you're seated by age group and ability. So my daughter was always seated in the A team and the first row of swimmers. So it went boy, girl, right? So she was always seated behind a fairly well-known swimmer. So my question is, if that swimmer, a male swimmer, had decided to change his gender and his name is Michael Phelps, would it have been fair for my daughter to compete against him? I know she would not have had the career she did. So help me understand, because this really is a dilemma for me.
So again, my name is Jonathan Tuttle. In preparing my testimony, I actually looked into Mr. Phelps's unique case because he is so well known. And I read many articles analyzing why he was so successful. And I just want to highlight first that, I respect all of his successes. He has some atypical body physiology that enables him to be so good. His wingspan is extremely long. His height is very high, and he produces a very low level of lactic acid, which enables him to engage in high endurance activities for longer. Right. For the record, I'm stating that for everyone's benefit. And none of those are unique to maleness. None of those are his decision. If there were a female athlete in your hypothetical there who had equal body proportions, would that be fair? If she were born female, to use the words of the bill sponsors, and she had those body proportions, is it her fault that is her shape? And I would say, if Mr. Phelps or someone with an identical body shape decided to transition, it is not their fault that they are tall, or that they have a wide wingspan, or that they are in their heart female. And I think that by forcing them to choose, well, if you transition, you can't be on this team, that denies who they want to be in their heart.
Okay, we'll go to Senator Washington, and then we'll go to for the final question for this panel to the sponsor. And then we'll move to the next panel. Senator Washington.
And thank you, Mr. Chair. And I just want to just clarify some things with the panel. It won't take long, but I just think it's important. Do people decide to affirm their identity in order to participate in sport? And have you experienced that? In other words, someone between, in junior high school or high school seeking to transition in order to gain an advantage in a sport. Is that anything you've heard of, or? I'm going to assume it's no, but I just want to clarify that that's the case.
I think that's a common concern, and it seems written into the subtext of this conversation of the bill. And really, we don't see that happening. We don't. Who would choose to endure a life where we get to sit in committee meetings like this here in the Senate, in the House? We have other bills that are about our lives, our identities, our existence, who would choose to face that? Frankly, it takes a lot of chutzpah.
Yeah, thank you. And then I also want to say that that we respect anyone that comes before us, and that we, using terms about, you know, like whatever they call themselves, and that is also not how we should approach our people who come to our committees as well. So, and, you know, so I also want to call that out, that, you know, there is an identity, you are who you are. If I identify myself as African-American or Black or colored or whatever word I choose, it's not up to someone else to tell me that. And I remember when I was 9 years old, my dad bought me a book that said about the natural superiority of women, because I was a girl athlete and there was a lot of assumptions that boys were better and men are stronger. And he just showed me all the different ways in which one is successful in athletics. And I'm just trying to confer, like you mentioned, there are biological things, but there's how much you practice, right? And there's lots of different aspects about what makes people competitive or not competitive in a sport that doesn't have to do with biology. Would that be the case as well? And then also, if you can confirm, well, I'll just say I think it's a law we passed, and it's not the case that young people that would be undergoing a physical sex change operation under age of 18. So I want to also have that out in the public as well. It's not the case that children, you know, younger are changing their sex, or they're confirming their sex biologically through surgery. So are all the things. Oh, and then also I would assume what you're telling us, and I appreciate the young woman here from the Anne Arundel School, and the idea of a third classification. I hear your response saying that that's sort of a separate but equal ideology that we've done in the past and have found to not be correct. So is that what so keeping people separate isn't fair? Is that what you're saying?
No, what I was just saying is that it would be unnecessary to have a transgender league to compete in, because we have coeducational leagues as well. So if a transgender student felt uncomfortable in a male or female sport, there's still coeducational sports to compete in.
And so therefore adding this other classification is not necessary. And it does perpetuate an ideology of separate and equal, which we know is always separate and unequal. But thank you. Thank you all so much for testifying.
Okay, we're gonna end this panel with the sponsor, Senator Carrozza, and then we'll go to one more panel of a couple of witnesses.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for the hearing.
And also, the Vice Chair has additional questions. So why don't Senator Carrozza, and then we'll end with Vice Chair King.
You know, part of this was, I think none of us want to deny anybody opportunities. So when the issue comes up of trans identifying athletes participating in high school sports, when this question has been debated in other states, and we had a witness on here before, Evie Edwards, an NCAA athlete, you know, she spoke about, you know, looking at utilizing an open men's division to meet the needs of trans and non-conforming athletes, or the additional divisions that we talked about. And so, part of this is, again, the purpose of my bringing it forward on the fairness issue for girls' sports, but not denying that there's other options for trans identifying athletes to participate. And I guess I was trying to understand, and maybe, Director Blinder, if you could respond just very briefly. These are other possible options and opportunities, so all can participate. Am I hearing you are open or not open to that?
Well, I guess it sounds like you did not want to play men's sports as a woman. So trans women and girls don't want to play men's sports or boys' sports.
That doesn't rule out a possibility of additional divisions for.
I think my fellow panelist addressed that very well, and where, as well as Senator Washington did, where the separate but equal is not actually accomplishing that goal.
You know, I think this committee takes a lot of pride in kind of sorting through how you can be fair to all. So thank you for your response.
Okay, Vice Chair Kagan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Normally I have questions. I just want to end this panel by saying we see you, we appreciate you. Thank you for your courage. Thank you for your time. Thank you for being with us and sharing your stories and helping to educate all of us on this committee and anyone watching at home, because there are a lot of people who are learning and experiencing, whether they've been included and have had experience or not. And so your testimony today helps move things forward. So I thank you, and I think the whole committee thanks you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you to this panel. We have two final witnesses on this bill signed up unfavorable. Raya Gupta, Jeremy Browning. Is Raya Gupta and Jeremy Browning here in the house? Okay, why don't you both come up here? And we're going to start with Raya. Well, we'll go with Jeremy Browning. You're right in front of the mic. And so you have 2 minutes, and then we'll go to Raya Browning after that. So you start, got 2 minutes.
So thank you, Chair Feldman, Vice Chair Kagan, and members of the committee. My name is Jeremy Browning. I use he, him pronouns, and I'm the director of the Maryland Commission on LGBTQIA+ affairs. The commission's in strong opposition to Senate Bill 381, Fairness in Girls Sports Act, which, despite its name, does not promote fairness. Instead, it institutionalizes discrimination and exclusion against transgender and intersex women and girls. Additionally, this approach not only disregards the rights and dignity of transgender women and girls, but also places an undue emphasis on the bodies of all girls, women, and athletes assigned female at birth, potentially subjecting them to invasive and degrading physical examinations. I want to take a moment to share some highlights from the Early Insights report from the 2022 U.S. Trans Survey, which was just published this morning. A record number of transgender people took the 22 survey, 92,329 to be exact. The survey found discriminatory policies like this one cause real harm. 47% of the respondents had thought about moving to another state because of their state government considered or passed laws that targeted transgender people, such as banning access to bathrooms, healthcare, or sports like this bill. And 5% of those respondents had actually moved out of state because of such state action. Thanks to the collective leadership of this committee, the Ways and Means Committee, the General Assembly, and the Governor's Office, many of those transgender, non-binary, and intersex folks have made Maryland their home or are planning to do so. So in conclusion, we are very grateful for your continued support, and the commission urges an unfavorable report on Senate Bill 381. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Feldman, Vice Chair Kagan, and committee members. My name is Rhea Gupta, and I'm here on behalf of Strong Schools Maryland as a policy researcher in strong opposition of Senate Bill 381. At Strong Schools Maryland, we advocate for the blueprint for Maryland's future, ensuring that all students have the opportunity to reach their fullest potential and thrive upon graduation. We find it both disheartening and actively concerning that this narrative of transgender exclusion and discrimination masquerading as Girls Fair Play Act is being discussed again this session. It is as simple as this bill fails to define the problem that it proposes to solve. There is no substantial evidence to suggest that current policies of gender inclusion in sports are causing problems, and current best practices defined by experts support the implementation of policies that promote inclusion and community. It is actively concerning as the passing of this proposed legislation poses real and imminent threats to the health and well-being of transgender students all throughout Maryland. Senate Bill 381 imposes restrictive binary on students as it mandates the organization of athletic teams solely based on sex. This outdated concept does not take into account the growing number of students with diverse gender identities, and further protects students and schools that discriminate against transgender youth participation. The passing of this legislation will have real negative impact on gender nonconforming and transgender youth as it perpetuates a culture of exclusions, which may lead to many students avoiding areas such as bathrooms and locker rooms that are supposed to be safe spaces in schools. It'll prevent them from never joining and participating in sports events or teams, and it will lead them to feel insecure, unsafe, and unsupported in our schools. Strong Schools Maryland is committed to continuing future-focused work in creating world-class schools that are inclusive to all Maryland students, both on and off the field. For these reasons, we respectively urge an unfavorable report on Senate Bill 381.
Okay, any questions for the two witnesses? Senator Augustine, and then we'll go to Senator Simon.
Thank you, Chair Feldman. You know, I want to ask you, because you're on the commission, right?
I'm the director.
You're the director of the commission. And I really want to ask you there's the policy, and then there's the other impact, even on students who aren't athletes and stuff like that, but that might see this as an indication from in this instance, the legislature, that these students, these people are somehow don't belong, or there's something wrong with them or something like. Can you speak to that for me? Because I really have a problem with that.
Yes, that's a very real concern. And we see in some school districts around the state that are less affirming, there's higher cases of bullying, higher cases of students who are have suicidal ideation, things like that. Whereas communities that are more supportive, more affirming in their policies and in their communications, their leadership, the students feel more safe and protected. So, for example, if a high school or a middle school has a GSA, a Gender Sexuality Alliance, just the fact that it exists, even if a student that is queer or trans or questioning doesn't attend, just the fact that it existing lowers suicidal ideation for that community. So having a bill like this come out of the General Assembly, it does, I think, sort of empower folks to feel like, okay, we can treat those community members as less than because our state law says they are.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm really concerned about that. Thank you.
Senator Simon Ayer and then Senator Brooks. Senator Simon Ayer.
Yes, thanks for taking the time to come down and testify. I believe you mentioned that there's no evidence that this bill is trying to fix a problem where there's no evidence that there is a problem. So do you know if they track the gender identity of those who win sports in our high schools?
I feel like you would be more able to answer that question as an expert.
So I can look into that and get back to you because I don't want to misspeak, but we haven't seen evidence of what the bill is claiming here in Maryland. The other thing that the bill, this came up in the hearing last week in the House, that Delegate Fair asked one of the panelists if a trans male would be able to play women's sports, and they said no. But in the bill's language, if you're assigned male at birth, if you're assigned female at birth and are a trans male, you're able to play girls and women's sports. So the bill has a lot of problems.
So I'm trying to get to the root problem. And I know the intention of the sponsor was fairness. I have 5 daughters, so I understand fairness to daughters. But at the same point, if we don't know if it truly is a problem in Maryland, is it or is it not? Because we don't have the data, and the governor likes to follow the data. If there isn't the will to pass this bill, would you support a bill that amended it to be a report of the winning students, just identify not by name, but their gender identity, to get an idea? This is not a problem in Maryland, or actually it is a problem.
I'm not sure I understand the question.
Would you support an amendment that would change the bill to a reporting requirement so we would understand if it is a problem in Maryland or not?
So I can take that back to the commission and get their sense or their decision on it. But my sense is no, that they would not support that.
Okay.
Okay, Senator Brooks.
Thanks, Chair. I don't know whether this question should be put to you or to the sponsor. Have you ever heard of ambiguous genitalia?
Are you referring to someone who might be intersex?
Right, exactly. And what impact would that have? You know, because that does happen about, I think, 1 in every 5,000 kids born in the US. I mean, what category would they be placed in? How would that work?
So under the current policies we have here in Maryland, in the position the commission would be, regardless of whether they're intersex or not, that they should be able to play the sport that aligns with their gender identity.
Right.
So that would be the same for an intersex person. So if they are intersex and identify as male, they can play male sports. If they are intersex and identify as female, they should be able to play girls sports.
Okay, all right, thanks, Chair.
Okay, any additional questions for this final panel? Okay, seeing none, that concludes the bill hearing on Senate Bill 381, which brings us to Senator Zucker. Next bill has patiently been waiting, Senate Bill 444. And Senator Zucker, we only have one witness, Matt Power, signed up. And so, Senator, you take the time you need to present 444, and then we'll hear from Mr. Power, and then we'll take questions, okay?
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, Madam Vice Chair, distinguished members of EEE. For the record, Senator Craig Zucker, I know you might have a long day, so I'll keep my testimony brief. This legislation is enabling, and really it's with the support of the University System of Maryland. Great to have Matt Power here with the independent colleges as well as the community colleges. Right now, there's a Maryland Longitudinal Data Systems Governing Board, and this legislation is enabling them to participate in the United States Census Bureau's Post-Secondary Employment Outcomes Project. So it's like PSEO. And part of the reason why this is important is there's 27 other states doing this, including Virginia, and we want to have the ability to be able to track the success of students in higher ed that will help inform our higher education budgeting and also our higher education, priorities. I would, urge a favorable report as this is enabling. It's budget neutral. This is a free service offered by the United States Census Bureau. So with that, I pass it over to Mr. Power.
Okay, Mr. Power.
Thank you very much, Chair Feldman, Vice Chair Kagan, members of the committee. Thank you for the opportunity to be here today. I think the Senator has outlined it very well. This enabling legislation, should the governing board choose to move forward with it and work on the project, will allow students, parents, policymakers to see the earnings of students 1, 5, 10 years out, what industries they go into, as well as the geographies where they wind up working. It's a great service provided by the Census Bureau, and currently we're missing out on the opportunity for this information. With that, I'll leave it there and encourage you to look at the Data Explorer that's included in the testimony at your leisure. Thank you very much for your consideration.
Okay, any questions for the sponsor or for Mr. Power? Yes, Senator Vice Chair Kagan.
Thank you. I assume this is for Mr. Power, but Senator Zucker, if you have something. I'm just curious, if the data showed that our students were moving out of state or they were all in this occupational category and we thought some diversity in occupational categories would be smart or something. Can you envision, after this census data is collected and reported, can you envision the independent colleges and universities possibly modifying any of their messaging, educational tracks, offerings, coaching? I'm so curious.
Sure, that's a great question. Thank you. I think, even beyond policymakers, the deans of individual programs would love to know what their students go on, what kind of careers they have, what kind of industries they're in. And I do think it would impact the way that we message some of the things that we do, as well as the way that each institution can track their alumni to figure out if they're landing in particular sectors, fields, or geographic areas. So I think there is, for prospective students, it would be great to know, what do people who go into this major at this school, what do they wind up earning, what careers do they wind up having, and where do they wind up living? It's more just sort of helpful information for everyone, and the only way to get it on a national level is to participate in this project with the Census Bureau.
Really interesting. Just one quick follow-up comment more than a question. The only concern about the salary stuff, the income information, is that people who go into business are going to be earning more than our social workers, our teachers, our legislators. And so, we do want to make sure that people are also going to the nonprofit sector and in community service. So that's got to be something we might want to think about how
Well,
we
we're
might
not- okay.
balance that messaging.
Can I make one response to
Of
that?
course.
We certainly agree. Education for education's sake is important. Salary is not the most important thing at all. At the same time, the information is there and it's available, and some people have a greater interest in it than others, but that is not the priority for MICUA or for the other institutions that are interested in participating in the project.
Okay, any additional questions for the sponsor or the panelists? Seeing none, that concludes bill hearing on Senate Bill 444. Thank you, Senator Zucker. Next, going to go to Senator Sidnor, who just walked into the room on Senate Bill 78, and you are the only witness. So, Senator Sidnor, the floor is yours on Senate Bill 78.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman and committee. I'm Charles Sidnor here to testify about Senate Bill 78, which is a local bill which helps to bring some transparency to an entity that we call the School Board Nominating Commission. The School Board Nominating Commission, let me back up. In Baltimore County, we have a hybrid school board. So we have some officials who are elected, some who are appointed and go through this process that they submit their names to the board, School Board Nominating Commission. School Board Nominating Commission conducts some interviews, sends some names forth to the governor. The governor then has an opportunity to appoint those members. In the past, and this is a relatively new process, but in the past, we've had some issues kind of figuring out who was being interviewed and which names were being put forth to the governor. So what this particular bill does, and I would say as amended, and I'm not certain if the amendment was sent to you all, but I will share that amendment with you if it was not. But as amended, what the bill does is it puts a requirement on the School Board Nominating Commission to publish the names of candidates prior to the School Board Nominating Commission initiating interviews. So that's number one. And what it also does is it takes interviews and the deliberation process, and it makes them subject to being recorded and disclosure about 48 hours upon request. Why are we asking for that? Because again, we've had interviews, or this School Board Nominating Commission, what it has been doing is going into a closed session to conduct some of this business, and the names just kind of appear. So the argument that I've made is, if you're running for office for the school board, the public can ask and can find out all kinds of information about you. However, if you go through this process, the public has a much more difficult time figuring out who to ask questions of, and really what people's backgrounds are that are going to serve on a vitally important commission within our county. So with that, I rest. Our committee, our delegation will be taking this bill up on Monday. So there has not been a vote by a committee at this point.
Okay, be sure to get us a delegation letter at the appropriate time. Any questions for Senator Sidnor on Senate Bill 78? Okay, seeing none. Thank you, sir.
Thank y'all very much.
That concludes bill hearing on Senate Bill 78. We're next waiting on Senator Rosapep. Let's wait 30 seconds for Senator Rosapep. Is apparently en route. No, that does not look like Senator Rosapep. Senator Rosapep is en route. So let's hold. Okay, it's the prize. So it's a race between Senator Ellis, and Senator Rosapep. Who shows up through this front door first. Yes, somebody wanted to play Jeopardy music in the meantime.
I was just about to break in.
Okay, Senator Rosapep wins. Senator Rosapep, we are on Senate Bill 33. And we do have some witnesses signed up favorable. They're not part of a sponsor panel. So we could just take you and then bring them up, or I could bring them up if you have any preference. We've got 4 witnesses signed up, all straight favorable, but I'm not sure if they're all here. Why don't you go ahead and present Senate Bill 33?
I appreciate it, and I will be brief, and I want to
Okay.
encourage my supporters to be brief as well.
Excellent.
Because I believe this bill has passed this committee and the Senate at least twice. So been there, done that. And it's the same bill that we passed in the past. It has not gone through the House for no specific reason that that stands out. It's pretty straightforward. It's another effort to try to help kids get a head start on getting into good careers. And so it has 3 provisions. One is it says that if schools are providing visibility and promoting college options, like putting pennants up on the wall, they need to do the same thing for employers and for apprenticeship sponsors. So kids visually see in a school what their opportunities are post high school, and then not just college. Equal treatment. Similarly, there are school systems that pay the fees for like SAT exams and so forth. This just says if you're paying for SAT and academic tests, you got to pay for industry recognized credential tests and apprenticeship entrance tests. Fair play, balance, equity. Third provision says that if you use a platform, the one that's most widely used in Maryland is called Naviance, and school systems have been using it for a decade or more. And it's about interests and future options, a lot of data collected about the kids. Naviance sells that data to colleges to recruit kids, to see what they're interested in, to see if they can do it. This just says same thing. If you have this kind of platform, you have to make, at the option of the kid decides whether they want to share their info or not. You have to make that info available to employers and apprenticeship sponsors who register with the State Department of Labor or with local workforce boards. We've passed similar legislation over the last couple of years for the the military recruiting test, to say that that information can be available to employers and apprenticeship sponsors who register with the state. We did last year the same thing for work permits, so that kids who are already working, they may hear about better jobs, and employers who are looking for kids with work experience will be able to find kids with work experience. This last provision adds a third leg of that, just to provide more transparency, get rid of friction between kids looking for jobs and career opportunities and employers looking for them. Happy to answer questions.
Okay, questions for the sponsor on this bill that passed unanimously last year, Vice Chair Kagan, and then we'll go to Senator Carosa.
It was just, I finally was able to get to it, and it looks like, yes, unanimous, and it got to the House and it was referred to committee. Any ideas what happened, and how are we going to get it through the chair?
Folks about that. I say this with great respect for our House colleagues. I think they aren't really feeling the vibe. It's not negative. It's just like, well, we got other things to do. I mean, I've never got real hostility to it. It's like, we got a lot of stuff to do, but I'm happy for any insight from members of this committee into how we can move it through the House. I'm serious about it. The administration has not submitted testimony, but I know they're supportive of it. So we're going to work it. There's a crossfire working on the House side, but not giving up.
Good.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Okay, Senator Carosa.
Thank you, Senator Rosa Pep. We enjoy serving on the Apprenticeship Commission with you.
Thank
And
you.
I wanted to just, with this bill, just see what we've talked about during our Apprenticeship Commission, especially when it comes to giving employers and the school system some flexibility, that while we push for traditional apprenticeships, that we also recognize that the school to work, that there's other pathways that actually should also be credited towards the blueprint. And I just, since you brought up employers, I just wanted to see if you would comment on that.
Yes, this is the reason you voted for this bill twice before, is because it's not limited to apprenticeship sponsors. It's apprenticeship sponsors and other employers. So it's comprehensive. Thank you for raising the issue. It's a good question.
Okay, any additional questions for the sponsor, Senator Rosa Pep, also known as the ambassador? Okay, well, thank you, sir. We do have the 4 witnesses signed up, and I'll call them up here. And again, bearing in mind that this bill did pass this committee last year. Mara Bab, we've got Artie Kamali, Grayson Wiggins, and Brianna January from Mako. So those are our 4 witnesses, all signed up straight favorable. And who wants to start? Okay, why don't we start, Brianna, why don't you January, why don't you start and then we'll just go down the row, okay? And everybody's got 2 minutes.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair, Madam Vice Chair, esteemed committee. The good bill sponsor did ask that his supporters be brief, so I will just say on behalf of county governments, we strongly support this bill as it aligns with a lot of the good work that counties are doing on college and career readiness. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Let's go down the aisle.
Good afternoon again. My name is Mara Babb, and I'm a student from Anne Arundel County. And on behalf of CRASC and the Legislative Department, I am testifying in support of SB 33. CRASC strongly supports increased career-focused programs for students with varying interests in all socioeconomic backgrounds. With higher education becoming less accessible due to high tuition rates and the repeal of affirmative action, this bill will allow students to pursue vocational interests and have access to jobs upon graduation. This bill will greatly support the Career and Technical Education CTE program that the Maryland State Department of Education have outlined in their blueprint. Access to apprenticeship and CTE programs will greatly benefit both students and businesses. With these opportunities for students in Maryland, they will be ahead of their peers from other states for selective hiring processes. This will accumulate in students gaining experience in technical and professional skills and a jump start to full-time employment right after graduation. Additionally, with the release of student information to certain apprenticeship sponsors and employers, businesses in Maryland are provided a stable and reliable employment pipeline, increased employer retention, and a positive return of investment. These benefits of apprenticeships and certification programs have been recognized by students and boards of education. According to the MSDE blueprint, between the school years of 2020 and 2022, participation in apprenticeships in high school increased by 108%, which signifies the increased popularity and interest in career opportunities. Accordingly, CRASC requests a favorable committee report on SB 33. Thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you. Let's go finish the panel and then we'll open up questions. Sir?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee, Artie Kamali on behalf of Employ Prince George's, and really I couldn't have said it better myself, so us too. Thank you.
Okay, we like that.
Good afternoon, Mr. Chair. Grayson Wiggins here on behalf of the Maryland Multi-Housing Association. Test filed a bill last year, us too. Thank you.
Okay, great. Vice Chair Kagan.
Super quickly, Ms. Budd, CRASC, this is a different video than the last one. Each one is posted. Can you just translate the acronym so anyone watching at home knows what group you're leading?
Okay, thank you. The Chesapeake Regional Association of Student Councils.
Okay, any additional questions for the panel? Okay, seeing none, that concludes the bill hearing on Senate Bill 33. And we are going to next move to Senator Ellis, Senate Bill 200. Senator, would you come up and take the time you need to present Senate Bill 200?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chair Feldman, Vice Chair Kagan, the members of the Education, Energy, and Environmental Affairs Committee. I'm Senator Arthur Ellis, District 28, representing Senate Bill 200, which aims to bring attention to the lack of a safe walkway so many students have to get to school in Maryland, K through 12. This Senate bill is a third time I'm introducing this bill here in this committee. And like the previous Senator Roosevelt, he said he will not give up, and I will not give up also. I was home late last year and watching the local news and the DMV, the metropolitan area, and breaking news, several students were run over by a van, and they were going to school. And I was really troubled by that because those children did not have the safety precautions in place right across from the school. It seems like poor children who come from poor families, rural families, they don't have lobbyists to come up here and to fight for them, to say, hey, spend some of our wealth to protect us as we try to get an education. No one's fighting for them. No one is up here saying that this is a big problem in Maryland, all over Maryland. The lack of safe routes for children to get to school. In the fiscal note, it talks about Montgomery County says solving this problem will be expensive, $96.5 million. It's expensive because it's a huge problem. In Arundel County, $635,000 per year for several years. Frederick County, $1.5 million. Wycomico County, $2.5 million. This is a big problem. Guess what? Let's do nothing. It's too big. While we sit back and hear about these children getting run over because they don't have a safe pathway to go to school. I'll get to, I was going through the committee testimony submitted, and our Maryland Association County says, MACO does not raise policy objections to the bill's goal of ensuring safe routes of students. The county's concerns are merely practical and cost-driven. How about the lives of these children? How about their lives? How about speaking up for these children? Why just worry about the money? Okay, you all worried about the money? Let me tell you about the money. The bipartisan infrastructure bill passed through Washington, D.C., federal government, allotted since 2021, all the way through 2026 fiscal year, monies to do sidewalks. In 2021, $850 million were available. 2022, $1.384 billion. 2023, this current fiscal year, $1.411 billion. 2024, $1.439 billion. 2025, $1.468 billion. So if you fail to act previously, saying you don't have the money, well, there's still monies available from the federal government. 2026, $1.498 billion. Do you get the point I'm making? Money's available, okay? This bill, the bipartisan infrastructure bill, contains the transportation alternative set aside from the surface transportation block grants. That's what comes to the states. Listen to this, committee members. Eligible uses of the set-aside funds include projects and activities that were previously eligible under various grants going back many years. Projects such as pedestrian and bicycle facilities, recreational trails, safe routes to school. Huh. Those exact words, I'm not making these words up. In this bill, it says, safe routes to school. Federal funds available that comes to the state to tackle the problems because it's a huge problem nationwide. And I'm reading from a fact sheet from the Federal Highway Administration. I can share that with the committee later on. This is an official fact sheet, not from Ellis to make a point with this bill, but federal government. I'm reading directly. They'll bring on to say state and local competitive grant program. So this process must include prioritization of project location and impact in high need areas, such as defined by the state, such as low income, transit dependent, rural, and other areas. I mean, the money is available. It says they prioritize these areas that are overlooked by folks with power and with influence, because these poor families, which I grew up in a very poor family, don't have access to lobbyists, have access to folks to say, hey, come on now, think about the lives of our children. Think about the impact when you have 3, 4 children wiped out going to school, trying to learn. Think about the wives and husbands they won't have. Think about the children they won't have, the grandchildren these parents won't have when, you know, these things happen just from trying to do the right thing, trying to go to school. So, you know, there are solutions to the problem that is brought up, saying that the problem exists, but it's so expensive for us to do it. Not just MACO, but the some Board of Education came up, oh, no, it's too expensive. And I mean, you know, we should be concerned more than just when our kids get to school. We should be concerned when they're on their way to school, safe route to school. This is all over Maryland. This is a problem. I've sat in an office building after heavy snow outside Thomas Stone High School in Charles County, which is on a very busy highway, no sidewalks. I see those children walking in the road with the snowbank in the road, trying to get home. What kind of people are we to sit back and watch this happen and say we even care? We even care. When money is available, we just need the willpower to tell them, go get the money, plan for it, put some thought into our children and our families, and mainly the ones who don't have access to high-powered lobbyists, access to the corridor of power to look out, not just for education, but for the lives of their loved ones. Thank you, committee members, for your indulgence, and I ask for a favorable report.
Okay, Vice Chair
On
Kagan
Senate
has
Bill
a question. Senator Ellis, we'll start with Vice Chair Kagan.
Thank you. Senator Ellis, thank you for your passion. Thank you for your concern about our kids. I know that every one of us in this body and beyond care about the safety of our kids because we're investing so much in them and they're our hope for the future. I wonder whether you've had any conversations with any of our federal representatives. I know that a few years ago, I called my awesome Congressman, Jamie Raskin, and I told him about an issue I was working on, and he thought it was such a good idea. He got it inserted into the Federal Infrastructure Act. And there was a new program that was created with $500 million for one portion of it and $50 million for another portion. And it got done, and it didn't have to be a contest between other worthy priorities in the Maryland budget. So I just wonder if that's something you've tried, and if not, maybe that's something worth investigating because there is federal funding out there, and maybe that's part of a solution of getting it done and finding the money for it. So
yeah, thank you, Vice Chair, for that question. And so I brought this up, and Congressman Hoyer said, I gave you the money. Go read the infrastructure bill. And I went and did my research. And here it is. It's in here. It's in here. And he said, go create the infrastructure, the grant writers from all your institutions to get that money that's in the federal budget. This is in the federal budget to the tune of this fiscal year, $1.439 billion. And safe routes to school, that is in the purpose language for this money.
so shout out to Congressman Steny Hoyer for helping get that done and connecting you there. Matt Verghese runs our Capitol Hill office and helps figure out where the federal funding is and helps get it there. He was just here today for the State of the State. So I'm happy to talk with you offline about maybe following up and figuring it out. In the meantime, maybe our spy can pass that on and flag it to the president, and we can just have other conversations because there may be an easier solution with federal funding.
Well, this is easier. The money is here. The money is here. We have as a state and a Board of Education need to come up with that plan, which this bill calls for, to assess the unsafe routes to school, which I see it. I'm not going to those schools, but I see it. I hear it on the news personally. The money is there. What these boards of education and counties need to do is to prioritize the lives of these kids and put someone in those huge bureaucracies on the project to go get the money that is there. And they need instructions basically from us to go get that money and to do it, instead of saying it's too big of a problem, so we will do nothing. We'll stick our heads in the sand while you know what's exposed.
Okay, any additional questions for Senator Ellis? Thank you, sir. And we do have two witnesses signed up unfavorable. We got John Willems from the Maryland Association of Boards of Education. I don't know if John, is John still here? Okay, and there you are. Well, I see John Pica, but not John Willems. Okay, why don't you, and Brianna January from Mako. Brianna, why don't you come up here as well? Both of you are signed up unfavorable, and those are the final two witnesses on this bill. So it's January. Why don't you start off, and then we'll pick up Mr. Willems after that. And again, you're on the clock. So.
Hello again, Mr. Chair, Madam Vice Chair, esteemed committee. Sorry that this will not be as short of testimony as my last bill was. Committee, counties share the same concerns around safety that the senator expressed, and this is a very big issue for us and a top priority. But I will say that the fiscal note is very real, and it takes into account feedback from a lot of counties, big and small, about just how difficult of a challenge this is to address. But committee, outside of money being an issue, there's also a very large intergovernmental issue that's not addressed by the bill. The bill as drafted says that if a best route for a student is determined to be through XYZ city, streets, state-owned, county-owned, municipality-owned, then that is the route that the county is responsible for constructing the crosswalks and sidewalks. Now, the issue with that is that, as you can imagine, areas of higher density and population are probably the areas where our schools are. Those are probably in municipalities. Counties have no say operationally or fiscally over the roads that would likely be required based on the bill as drafted for that route to be constructed. And so we have a huge challenge. It's not under our scope of authority to be able to create sidewalks or crosswalks on roads that are owned and maintained by municipalities or state highways. Last year, Mako was able to work with the good bill sponsor and basically point into a direction that the senator has suggested, which is helping to find federal opportunities and resources to fix this issue because it is a real issue. However, that is obviously not what is in the bill that was presented to you. And as drafted, as I noted, it's not just a money issue. This is a really big issue around our authority as county governments.
Mr. Willems, why don't you go next? You're on the clock.
Chairman Feldman, members of the committee, John Willems representing the Maryland Association of Boards of Education. Again, this year opposing legislation, this year Senate Bill 200 to require that school systems develop reports of safe routes to school for walkers, for students not provided bus transportation within the area identified by the school system, and then to basically shift the burden of the infrastructure developments called for in that report to our county government funding authorities. The concern is we don't believe we have inherently dangerous routes to school in our plans, and there is a lot of work and effort that goes in to ensuring safe routes for walkers to school, and there are costs and routing decisions that are made in heavily congested jurisdictions to provide services to students within what would otherwise be a walking area to address those safety issues. But also, this report would be a public document and be available honestly for litigation purposes for any injury or incident that occurred in those walking areas. And while we would appreciate and enjoy collaboration with our county funding authorities on infrastructure projects, it's not realistic, we believe, to expect sidewalks to be constructed everywhere that would be identified in these safe routes to school reports. When you think of the land use issues around the taking of easements and property in neighborhoods that have existed for decades and decades without sidewalks, and the hurdles would be significant to reasonably expect the projects that we would be identifying in our reports to be completed. So for those reasons, we urge an unfavorable on this bill. Thank you.
Okay, we're going to start with Senator Hester.
I'd be interested in if either one of you could answer the question. If there's the money available in the in the federal legislation. Are there counties or school systems going after it? And if not, why not?
I'm aware of significant investment in Montgomery County in safe routes to schools construction projects. I believe the number was $15 million. But I'm not aware of other jurisdictions and specific dollar amounts and requests for funding. Would again just kind of emphasize that it's about much more than the money if you're looking at the legal issues around actually having to take ownership of property that has been essentially the homeowner's property, and in neighborhoods where it may be very difficult to actually acquire the property and then construct the sidewalks. And so it's not just about the money, you know, at the front end of the equation. It's about the hurdles to actually implement and complete these projects.
County has received like $15 million.
I don't know that they've received it. I literally read an article that announced that they were celebrating the announcement that they were going to invest $15 million in safe routes to school.
Okay, thank you so much.
Okay, maybe the two Montgomery County senators can find out where that money came from for you. I mean, 2.5. So, you know what? It's like there was no redistricting last year. Yes,
And
3.
if
I'm
I may
sorry.
just add quickly, Chair, to address your question, Senator, again, even if a county were to receive funds, we could only apply that to the county-owned land and county-owned routes. So again, it would require agreement with our municipalities, possibly the State Highway Administration, and then we'd have to figure out who would be accountable to each section. I mean, if we're building sidewalks along a route that goes through multiple jurisdictions, is the county government just responsible for the maintenance of those within the county lines? And then the municipality has to agree to maintain within their lines. So there are layers to the process of this kind of project.
Okay, any additional questions for our two witnesses? Okay, seeing none, that concludes bill hearing on Senate Bill 200. Thank you. And we're going to next move to Senator Hedelman, who's been patiently awaiting. She's got two bills. We're going to start with Senate Bill 425, if that's okay, Senator. And you do have designated two sponsor panelists, Aisha Holmes and Jennifer Lynch. If they're here, we can bring them up. And then again, we have some additional witnesses signed up favorable, both in person and virtual. We'll pick those up after you present and along with your witnesses. So Senator Hedelman, we're on Senate Bill 425.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, Madam Vice Chair, members of the EEE Committee. For the record, I'm Shelley Hedelman, and I'm here today to present Senate Bill 425, Maryland Meals for Achievement in Classroom Breakfast Program alterations. As many of us know, because we hear about it from our constituents, we have many hungry children in our schools. And in our infinite wisdom, the legislature passed a program called, created a program called Maryland Meals for Achievement in Classroom Breakfast Program. And it provides breakfast to all students in schools where at least 40% of the children qualify for free or reduced meals under the federal program. And in that current form, the program allows for food to be served in any broadly accessible part of the school in middle school and high schools, but not in elementary schools. For elementary school kids who may arrive late to school, this restriction can limit their access to free breakfast. This bill just allows elementary schools, with the coordination of MSDE and the local school board, to permit elementary schools to have that same flexibility so that children can get their food, grab and go, just like the big kids do. We think it will go a long way towards getting more food to more hungry kids, and allows our local governments and our local schools to have the flexibility they need to distribute that food. So that's sort of it in a nutshell. I don't want to take too much of the committee's time, but I would love to turn it over to my two witnesses. And
okay, why don't we
answer
do
any
that, and then we'll
questions
open up some questions.
Thank
you. Got a mic right in front of you. Why don't you tell us who you are, and then you're going to be on the clock for 2 minutes, and then we'll take it from there. Okay.
Sounds wonderful.
My name is Jennifer Lynch. I am the Senior Policy Advisor for Education and Workforce Development for Baltimore County Executive Oshevsky. Good afternoon, Chair, Vice Chair, and esteemed committee members. It is my honor to testify before you today in support of Senate Bill 425. Currently, MMFA requires that elementary schools provide breakfast using an in-classroom delivery model. This model carries additional cost and human resources burdens to school districts, including additional refrigeration, transport carts, heat bags, and staffing. SB 425 would allow elementary schools to utilize a grab-and-go breakfast delivery model, which would allow districts to provide meals to our youngest learners in a more efficient and cost-effective manner. Baltimore County Public Schools is a perfect case study on the difference of student participation when offering in-classroom breakfast options versus grab-and-go meals. Last year, BCPS did not participate in the MMFA in-classroom breakfast program for elementary schools because of the associated in-classroom delivery costs. When they switched to universal meals and included grab-and-go options at all schools, they increased daily participation by an average of an additional 9,300 children every day and served over 700,000 additional breakfast meals. With the switch to grab-and-go breakfast, we are able to not only reduce the cost and administrative burden to our school systems, but we are able to provide children the dignity and choice to select their breakfast and eat when and where they choose. A small shift in eligible delivery models will have an exponential impact on our ability to ensure that no child goes hungry. So I'd like to thank you for your consideration and support of Senate Bill 425.
Okay, thank you. Well, tell us who you are first, and then you got a few
Dear
minutes.
Chair Feldman and Vice Chair Kagan and members of this committee, thank you for the opportunity to submit a testimony today in support of Maryland Meals for Achievement Flexibility Act of 2024, SB 425. I'm Aisha Holmes, the Director of Maryland's No Kid Hungry campaign. I have witnessed the vital role that school breakfast plays in the health and well-being and ultimate success of kids throughout our state. MMFA began as a humble program in 6 pilot schools in 1998. The Maryland Meals for Achievement program now reaches over 600 schools located in high poverty areas, providing breakfast after the bell to all students at no cost. MMFA has enabled thousands of kids to start their school days with a full belly and ready to learn. By passing SB 425, you can provide schools with added flexibility that they need to reach even more children. Approximately 1 in 8 kids in Maryland could face hunger this year. And programs like MMFA, which increase access to school breakfast, play a critical role in reducing food insecurity for our children and families. The changes outlined in SB 425 are budget neutral and would make the MMFA program more flexible to meet the needs of specific schools instead of a one-size-fits-all method on elementary schools. The change is in line with what currently exists in middle schools and high schools, as you've heard. It's a win-win. This bill allows schools to implement an in-classroom or grab-and-go model, both of which allow students the opportunity to consume meals in the classroom after the bell. When kids have full bellies, their test scores are higher, they're more attentive to their lessons, and there are fewer classroom disruptions. Breakfast is a critical school supply. I encourage a favorable report on SB 425. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for Senator Heddleman or the 2 sponsor panelists? Okay, seeing none. Thank you, Senator. We do have some additional witnesses. We've got 2 live witnesses, again, all signed up favorable and 1 virtual. Is Cody Wilt here? Cody Wilt. Okay, is Lynn Hetzler here? Lynn Hetzler? Where is Lynn? She's in. Okay, why don't you come up the witness table when you guys are free to leave, and then we have 1 additional witness virtually. So Ms. Hetzler, you're here on behalf of the Baltimore County Public Schools, I believe, signed up favorable. And again, you've got 2 minutes, and then we'll finish up with our virtual witness as well. Okay, floor is yours.
Great, thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Jamie Hetzler, and I'm the Director of Food and Nutrition for Baltimore County Public Schools. I'll start by describing the process that my team encounters to serve breakfast in the elementary schools according to the current requirements. In the afternoon, the day prior to service, they pack individual coolers with food in one cooler and milk in another. So for an elementary school with an average of 20 classrooms, that's at least 40 coolers. They are then placed into large dedicated refrigerators with individual paperwork printed for each classroom. In the morning, they deliver 2 bags to each room. Many classrooms are upstairs or outside in trailers, which doesn't allow for the use of a cart. So those heavy bags are individually carried by my staff. Later, they return and pick up all the coolers from each individual room. As you can see, this process requires additional equipment, time, and staff. We provide 1 selection for each classroom, hope to get our leftovers returned, and expect teachers to properly account for meals. This year, with staffing shortages, challenges purchasing equipment, and rising inflation, this model was simply too cumbersome. At BCPS, we dropped the full MMFA program in all elementary schools and moved to grab-and-go service. The model was very successful. The students can choose from a variety of items. It has decreased waste, improved quality, allowed for hot items daily, removed the burden from teachers, and increased our participation. The grab-and-go service model still allows for children to eat in the classroom and breakfast after the bell. At BCPS, our participation in just the schools that went from in-classroom MMFA to grab-and-go increased. Our district-wide participation has increased 32% since last year. That's over 9,000 students per day. This year, we serve grab-and-go style in 100% of our schools. Thank you for your support in approving this bill.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for our witness? Okay, seeing none, thank you. And then we're going to conclude. We have a virtual witness in Barbara Harrell, and we see you, Barbara. And you're signed up favorable, and you're going to have 2 minutes, okay?
Thank you so much. Good afternoon, Chairman Senator Hedelman and committee members. Thank you for allowing my testimony on Senate Bill 425, Maryland Meals for Achievement in Classroom Breakfast Program Alterations. My name is Barbara Harrell, and I'm speaking as a registered dietitian and the retired director of FNS in Montgomery County Public Schools. I'm representing the Maryland School Nutrition Association. In 1998, when the original MMFA pilot began, I was fortunate to be a part of the pilot and observe the benefits it expanded through all grade levels. The MMFA Flexibility Act would benefit elementary students in the program in a number of ways, as it did for the upper levels. Multiple service locations spread throughout the school would allow for an increase in the variety of offerings to students, and this will increase student satisfaction and ultimately participation. The kiosk and/or multi-location service model would also decrease waste that occurs when every class has to be stocked with all the components. Additionally, perishable food items such as milk could be held at temperature, further decreasing food waste. The accountability for meals could be simplified into 1 step at the point of service. This 1-step process of accountability would be significantly more time efficient and accurately. Currently, accountability is completed in every class by school staff and then compiled by the FNS staff. Students who have special dietary or religious needs may also be flagged and noted via the point of service, and any modifications could be readily available. The flexibility for the middle and high school MMFA programs was a major enhancement for the upper levels. The expansion of these options to the elementary level would ensure a level playing field for all students. I encourage you to vote favorably for this bill. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for our virtual witness? Seeing none, that concludes the bill hearing on Senate Bill 425, and we're going to next move back to Senator Hedelman on Senate Bill 426. And you've got 2 sponsor panelists signed up here. We've got Ariel Frankston Morris and Devorah Orzu. And I'm sorry if I mispronounced that, I apologize. And then we've got 2 virtual witnesses as well, but we'll take the in-person witnesses first. So Senator Hedelman, you take the time you need. We've got Senate Bill 426 on the table here.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, Madam Vice Chair, members of the committee. My name is Shelley Hedelman, and I'm here to present Senate Bill 426. This is a creative approach to a couple of different issues that we're struggling with right now. We know that rapid technological advancement are our daily reality. To maintain our leadership in STEM, science and technology discovery, we must create an approach to science, technology, engineering, and math education that prepares and advances students for this future. And our communities must continue to develop students who are skilled in these fields and invest in new research and in innovation infrastructures that's inclusive. This bill is a creative solution to preparing all students for a future in these fields, while also incentivizing professionals who teach STEM. The unfortunate reality for many teachers is that they often look for a second job to make ends meet. Often, these supplemental jobs have little connection to their professional field. Senate Bill 426 provides an opportunity for additional compensation for retired and current public school teachers to teach science, technology, engineering, and math at non-public schools. This legislation that benefits these stakeholders duplicates an existing program that has had proven implementation success in New Jersey. There are lots of reasons why students attend non-public schools, and families of all backgrounds and economic levels choose this option to best serve their child's unique needs. While acknowledging that there exists some ideological opposition for funding for non-public schools, we structured this program so all the funding flows through public school districts with no public funds transferring to non-public school coffers. This program directly serves interests of public school districts in many ways. It increases the earning opportunity for public school STEM professionals and potentially eases recruitment and retention of STEM teachers in these districts by giving the opportunity to these teachers to teach after their school day ends. It increases the supply of STEM teachers, easing STEM teacher scarcity that is being felt nationwide. And by including retired public school STEM teachers as eligible, we'll be facilitating recruitment of teachers back into the workforce, further easing staffing shortages. This is a win-win program. The program not only benefits students in non-public schools, but benefits our community by exposing all students to high-quality STEM education and supports public schools by making it easier for them to recruit and retain teachers. You do not have them before you yet, but we have submitted amendments to address some of the concerns of MSEA and PSAM. Limiting participation, and the amendments would do the following. They'll limit participation in the STEM program to those schools that are already participating in the non-public school textbook program. They will specify that the non-public school shall assume general liability for the teachers who are participating in the program on their premises. They'll ensure that non-public schools assume responsibility for curricular integration and education outcomes. They'll provide current public school teachers pay at their public school salary rate. They'll protect unintended retirement compensation complications, and they'll ensure that MSDE has the flexibility to design a teacher notification process that minimizes any administrative burden on the public schools. And in addition to these amendments, we're open to including a pass-through fee for MSDE to cover any costs for administration of the program. This legislation allows retired teachers to re-enter the field and provides opportunities for current teachers to make some extra money, extra income after regular school hours, making sure they're compensated at their current rate. It supports all students by teaching essential skills in STEM by experts in the field. For students to compete in today's high-tech economy, our state can't afford for anyone to fall behind. And for these reasons, I ask for a favorable report. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Senator Hedelman. Why don't we pass it down and we'll just do it that way and tell us who you are. And again, you've got two minutes on the clock. Okay.
Okay, thank you so much. Chair Feldman, Vice Chair Kagan, honorable members of the committee. My name is Ariel Frankston Morris from Teach Maryland. Thank you for the opportunity to be here today to support the Maryland STEM program. Like Senator Hedelman said, this program will accomplish many valuable goals. It will build educational community, offer public school teachers an opportunity to share experience and expertise with more students, and earn extra compensation doing what they do best. It will address a major teacher shortage in non-public schools, and it will raise the caliber of STEM education in Maryland for Maryland's STEM forward future. For the past 4 years, this same program has benefited teachers and students in New Jersey with great success. I ask for a favorable report so it may do the same here in Maryland. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Honorable members of the committee, my name is Devora Ursi. I'm a public school teacher. I've been teaching actually over 40 years. I've been in the public system, starting from New York City Public School to I'm in Howard County currently. I'm passionate about science. We know that we want the best things for all children, regardless of the schools that they're in, and STEM is the way to go. The future of our state, the future of our country is science, technology, education, and math, and we need to do that for all children. I remember as a new teacher a couple of years ago, we had to have a second job. don't want to tell you some of the jobs that I had to have. And today I know people, young teachers that are actually bartenders in the evenings. So if we allowed this bill to pass, we could have teachers after school doing what they do best and what they love to do, and that would be to teach. Besides that, we all talk about collaboration and how we have to work together and how we have to learn from all different types. So by allowing public school teachers to be in a private setting, we could pass everything around. We could learn from each other. We can bring the best of both worlds together. It's only win-win. There's only benefits to that. I really think that this would be a very positive thing. For retirees, for teachers that need second jobs, for the private school system and for the public school system, it's only a benefit. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for the sponsor, Senator Hedelman, or our two witnesses before we go to the virtual witnesses who are also signed up? Any questions? How long is the New Jersey? I'm aware of the New Jersey model. How long that's been in place for how long?
That's been in place for 4 years, and I believe the virtual witnesses, 2 of them are public school teachers who participate in it, and someone helps navigate the program for schools. So
Okay, great. Okay, before we do that, again, last call for any questions for the sponsor or the witnesses. Thank you. Thanks for coming in. We're going to now go to our virtual witnesses. We've got Adam Katz, we've got Stephanie Hazelman, and Kenise Williams. I think all 3 are in the queue here. I called you, Mr. Katz, first, so why don't we start with you, and you've got 2 minutes to reiterate who you are and that type of thing, okay?
Sure. My name is Adam Katz. I live in New Jersey, and I'm the Associate Director of Government Programs for Teach Coalition, a nonprofit that advocates for and helps schools access government programs. Personally, I help the schools here navigate the STEM program in New Jersey, and I work with all the parties involved. So the Department of Education, all the schools that have pretty much ever participated, and almost every one of the 100 or so teachers that have been part of this program. So I'm familiar with it on all bases. What it does is it creates a beautiful partnership, really smooth partnership for everyone, where really everybody wins, a win-win for all those involved. So schools love it because they get high quality teachers that inspire their students. And students love it because they learn amazing skills and they get inspired to pursue careers in STEM. And some of these students are even winning STEM competitions with the skills that they're learning from these teachers from the public schools. And the teachers, as you'll hear and as you've heard, they love this. They absolutely love it in New Jersey because they get to teach something that they love to students who are really excited to learn. And they get to do it at a place, a town, a school that actually works for them. So near their public school or near their home at a time that works with their schedule and their lifestyle. And really, they get to choose where, when, and what they teach. It's great. So we can judge the success of the program, not just by its staggering 15-fold growth over the years, but also by the fact that the participating teachers come back just about every year. So they all continue to return, and there are teachers right now applying to return for their 5th year next year. So not only that, but the teachers are actually referring their colleagues, their friends, and even their family members who are teachers to this program. In one school, there's actually a niece and an aunt who will be teaching there. So this program, by every year, by every metric, is a success here in New Jersey. And I thank you for
Okay, why don't we just go through, all 3 virtual witnesses, and then we'll take questions then. Ms. Hazelman, why don't you go next? I called you next, so to get you unmuted here. Okay, you've got 2 minutes.
Hi, my name is Lynn Hazeman. I am from New Jersey. I work in Patterson Public School System during the day, and I get to work with the STEM program at night. this is my first year working with the STEM program, and I'm highly excited about it. I get to work, I get to leave my regular school at 2:50. I start here at 3:30. I run 3 different classes, and it's a lot of fun. It's very hands-on here. I love hands-on work, and the gentleman I work with, I work at a all boys yeshiva, and I get to work with engineering and science combined in ways that these students work best. Because of the grant, we're able to do small group instruction, which really helps the boys figure out what they would like to do. Plus, for being a little bit of selfish reasons, as a teacher and a mom, it's great to actually have a second job right after my first job. So I come right here, I work, and then I get to go home and just be mom and do my lesson planning and stuff. But they pay at a good rate. So I don't have to worry about getting a second job that is not part of my qualifications. I get to take all of the learning that I have about STEM, and I specialize in technology, computer coding, and bring it to students that might not have somebody that is passionate about that. But because I am educated on it outside of this, then I get to bring that education in. And what's even more awesome is I learn a lot from the boys that I work with. So it's not even just me teaching them, it's them teaching me. Then I can bring what they teach me into my regular classroom, and what my regular classroom is into this classroom. So it's so cross-curricular, not only with the science and the technology that I bring in, but with culturals and personalities and everything else that I can share with everybody. So I love this program.
Okay, why don't we'll go to Ms. Williams, and then we'll take some questions of any of the 3 witnesses. Ms. Williams, you're up.
Hi. Yes. Hi, how are you? My name is Kenny Williams. I work at West Orange High School in New Jersey, and I am at Kushner. So I have been here for 2 years, and I have been able to play a lot of different roles. The first year I was on the math enrichment program with some students. So those are the kids that like love math and are engaged and everything. And then I've been in some pull-out classes. The bell's about to ring. Sorry, I want to go inside. In some pull-out classes where I've been with students who don't love math. So I've been able to kind of reach both the great students who love it and the students who don't love it. I've been able to pick up some tutoring jobs outside of this, which is great because they really enjoy the work that I do here. I get to make my own schedule, which is great. As the other teacher said, I'm a mom. And so to be able to come here, I even coach basketball. So like I can do this during the season, off season. The pay has been great. I've been able to recruit at least 5 other teachers from my school because they love it so much. And I just love how Kushner treats me. They really care about me as a person, and they understand and appreciate my time here. And by being able to really relay that message to my coworkers, that's how I've been able to get people to come here. So this year we've had about 3 teachers here from my school, and I already have 2 other teachers applying for next year because all I do is rave about how good the program is.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for any of the 3 virtual witnesses from New Jersey? Okay, seeing none. Senator Hedelman, since you know this is jointly assigned with budget and taxation, and you know you may have to go back to your committee and do a little magic because there is a $1 million fiscal note here. So I just want to put that out there. So your job is to go over there and find this $1 million for this committee to consider the bill. But I'm just putting it out there. Okay, any other final questions for the sponsor or for any of the witnesses? Okay, thanks to everybody for coming in today. Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, that's going to bring us next. So that concludes the bill here on Senate Bill 426. And we're going to next go to Vice Chair Kagan, Senate Bill 432, involving active shooter drills. And Madam Vice Chair, we do have 4 sponsor witnesses. Should I bring them up now?
Sure.
Or
Thank you.
Okay, we've got Nico Dorazio, Natalie Vinsky Ibrahim. We've got Leslie Bigden, and finally Lauren Lamb. Those are the 4 witnesses designated as sponsor panelists. We do have some additional witnesses after that, but we're going to start with you, Madam Vice Chair, on Senate Bill 432.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, colleagues. For the record, Cheryl Kagan, very proud to be the senator for Gaithersburg and Rockville. This is, we've talked in the past, today, and in other days recently about keeping our kids safe. This is a safety bill for our kids based on the reality that there are shootings in our schools. In 2023, it's been reported that there were 340 school shootings. That is astonishing. In schools around the country and obviously around Maryland, there are drills done. It is on average, if a child enters preschool at age 3 and graduates from 12th grade, he or she experiences about 60 shooting drills in their lifetime. The problem is that while we hope that it's keeping our kids safe, it's also traumatizing them. The goal of this bill is to put some guardrails and some limitations and some transparency to the process while giving the students, the faculty, and the staff the tools that they need if, God forbid, that day comes when there is a shooter in their school. We've all probably heard reports about drills where students are assigned the role of the shooter and they have to role play being the shooter, or role play being a victim lying on the ground, sometimes for 2 hours, I've heard, in one instance, pretending to be dead. These kind of situations leave long-lasting mental scars. So this bill simply talks about researching and learning from best practices from studies that are out there, putting some limitations so that no students are asked to role play anything that is traumatic, that cause post-traumatic stress disorder, identifying students and faculty that may have some challenges, either a physical disability or a behavioral challenge that needs to be addressed. Parents are notified in general, in advance, and during the school year. Students are given more information, so are the faculty and staff, and we want nobody to be surprised or disturbed. After the fact, after the drill, the parents are debriefed, they're given more information, but they're not going to learn in advance that next Tuesday at 12:15 p.m. They won't be given the specifics because there is the experience that's important. Any sound of gunfire or explosion would be prohibited. Again, super traumatic. And then there would be mental health follow-up afterwards. The last thing is that 1 year after the effective date of this bill, we ask that there is a safe storage of firearms in people's homes, that there is a protocol that is developed and shared. And so the department would have a year to do that. There are really thoughtful people who are here endorsing the bill, including my constituent who has been a page with us all week. And so I think I'd like to toss it, Mr. Chairman, if you don't mind. I think I'd like Nico to go next, and then we have a few other witnesses.
Okay,
Thank
okay.
you.
Pass that over and again, tell us for the record what your name is, and then after this, everybody's gonna be on the clock, okay? 2 minutes each.
Well, thank you, Senator Kagan, and good afternoon, Chair Feldman and members of the committee. My name is Nico Durazio, and I'm a senior at Thomas S. Boone High School in District 17. I also serve as the treasurer of the Montgomery County Regional Student Government Association. I'm here today advocating in support of the active shooter drill notification bill, SB 432. At Wogan, tensions are running high. After having had 2 bomb threats, it's hard to feel safe at school. With each new safety announcement, we fear that it won't be a bomb threat, but rather a real shooter. In fact, having had started the second semester last week, I remember my classmates and I looking around our new classrooms to find safe places to hide in case that there is a real shooter. Therefore, it goes without a doubt that students' fears run deep. Even during just an active shooter drill, our fears remain. With rattling doors, shuttered blinds, and the lights off, it's all too real. Without mental health resources at our hands after a drill, students across the county have to cope with these stressors on our own. However, SB 432 provides students the opportunity to practice active shooter drills without harming their mental well-being. Furthermore, with much needed trauma-informed supports provided after a drill, SB 432 provides a channel for students and staff to work through any emotional distress caused by an active shooter drill. Lastly, I acknowledge that the opponents of this bill state that it will restrict the autonomy of our county boards of education. However, in reality, this bill has no infringement upon the effectiveness of currently practiced active shooter drills in Maryland. Rather, with research-founded principles, it aims to make our schools both safer and more comfortable environments. The purpose of every active shooter drill is to train and not to traumatize. Therefore, in order to truly support the over 800,000 students in Maryland, I, alongside the Montgomery County Regional Student Government Association, urge a favorable report from the committee on SB 432. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Okay, thank you, sir. Okay, why don't we pass, Senator Kagan, why don't you pass it to, there you go. Tell us who you are, and you've got 2 minutes.
Good afternoon, Chairman Feldman. Thank you, Vice Chair Kagan and members of the committee. My name is Natalie Vinsky. I live in Columbia in District 12A, Senator Lamb's district. I'm also a survivor of gun violence and the mother of a survivor of gun violence. I'm here in support of SB 432, and I ask for a favorable report. 2 years ago, my son, Walter, and I were wounded in a shooting near our home, an incident that left lasting scars on both of us. Walter, who was just 4 at the time, was diagnosed with anxiety soon after, a condition we continue to navigate. Fast forward to this past September, as Walter started kindergarten at our local elementary school. It was the very first week of the quarter. An email from the school principal caught my attention. The students had participated in a drill earlier that day. Concerns flooded my mind. What kind of drill? How did Walter cope? What other drills were scheduled? Would there be lockdown or active shooter drills? Most importantly, who would be there to address his questions and alleviate his anxiety? The principal agreed to meet with me and discuss my concerns. They provided me with some details about what the drills entailed and a rough schedule of when they would take place. A conversation with Walter's teacher assured me that the drills were handled with age-appropriate language. The school counselor agreed to be present in Walter's classroom during the drill and to follow up afterwards with me and with him. As a parent, I felt reassured knowing that if my child had to participate in a drill, he would be fully supported on multiple levels. And I believe that all children and families in Maryland deserve this same assurance. If our state law mandates active shooter drills for our children, it only makes sense that we minimize the traumatic impact for them to the fullest extent possible. The necessity of this bill is clear to me, to Walter, and to all families and children in the state of Maryland. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Why don't you pass that mic down?
Good afternoon, Chair Feldman, Vice Chair Kagan, distinguished members of this committee. I'm Leslie Bigden, and I'm here representing Marylanders to Prevent Gun Violence. The Executive Director has also submitted my written testimony as well. Marylanders to Prevent Gun Violence is a statewide grassroots organization dedicated to reducing gun-related deaths and injuries throughout Maryland. We urge the committee for a favorable report on Senate Bill 432, which seeks to address how active shooter safety drills are carried out in school systems within the state of Maryland. Schools should be a safe space for children to grow and learn, and yet the United States experiences more school shootings than nearly all other nations. While deaths from school shootings pale in comparison to the overall toll of more than 100 daily gun deaths in the U.S., each school incident leaves a lasting impact on both local communities and the nation. Active shooter drills commonly used for school safety involve lockdowns where students and staff practice emergency procedures, including maintaining silence, securing doors, turning off lights. These drills may also include tactics like fighting back or evacuating, and at times simulate unannounced, realistic active shooter events. Despite their widespread use, this effectiveness of active shooter drills in reducing school shooting incidents is unclear. Growing evidence indicates that these drills, even without actual incidents, may cause harm, leading to increased anxiety, stress, and depression among students, teachers, and parents. Studies also raise ongoing concerns about the drill's impact on physical health, sparking worries about potential lifelong effects on future generations. Listen, if there's anyone who wants to keep our kids safe, it's me. I lost my nephew in Sandy Hook, okay? When I sent my son 5 years later to kindergarten, it was the hardest thing I've ever done in my life. I wanted to go and run after him, tell him where to hide, tell him if there was a loud noise, like to pretend he was dead. It wouldn't have been fair to me, and it's not fair to do this to our children. We need to put guardrails around this. Please vote favorably.
Okay, thank you. Why don't you pass that? Okay, go on.
Thank you, Chair Feldman, Vice Chair Kagan, and members of the committee. My name is Lauren Lamb. I'm a former high school teacher, and I'm here on behalf of the Maryland State Education Association and our nearly 75,000 educator members across the state. We stand in strong support of Senate Bill 432. Every child deserves to feel safe when they go to school, but we know that students today carry the awful awareness of how common gun violence is. Since 2020, guns are the leading cause of death for children in the US. We should all agree this is unacceptable and something needs to change. Since 2016, more than 95% of schools nationwide report drilling students on lockdown procedures, and MSD recommends as much for Maryland students. But active shooter drills, as others have pointed out, that are too realistic and use gratuitous measures like role play or sound effects do more harm than good and raise students' anxiety. As an educator, I have seen firsthand that active shooter drills, which we practiced at least once a year, can be deeply distressing for students and staff. These drills can have a profound effect on students who may have had past traumatic experiences related to gun violence. While preparation can be valuable, we need guardrails to ensure we aren't re-traumatizing students in the process. We are also acutely aware of the value of prevention measures. The requirement in this bill to ensure that families are informed of firearm safety best practices is a common sense measure that could prevent a tragedy. We thank Senator Kagan and the advocates on this bill for their work and urge the committee to issue a favorable report. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, questions for Vice Chair Kagan or any of the panelists? We've got, okay, we'll go to Senator Watson, then Senator Simonetti.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for this bill, Senator Kagan. And I appreciate the intent, the 346 shootings that occurred last year. It's important for everybody to recognize that the state of Maryland was number 2 in all of those shootings with respect to every state across. And please understand my line of questions here. Being a military guy, you know, we're taught to train to fight. And we go through these traumatic events so that when it's real deal time, we're calm, cool, and collected and know exactly what to do. So I agree with every reporting requirement and all those things, the notification of parents. But, you know, when we have a fire drill, you hear the fire alarm. And so if you take these other pieces out, and I agree, I don't want to see our kids walking around fake dead bodies. That's over the top. However, you know, how do you get our kids prepared to deal with an active shooter if they don't really train as if there is an active shooter?
Thank you, Senator Watson. When we do fire drills, and we all grew up doing fire drills, we didn't have flames in the hallway or in our classroom to teach us what a fire looks like or smells like. We hear the alarm and we learn how to leave the classroom, how to exit the building, and where to line up outside. I think the analogy is a good one, but I don't think we need, and in the same way as we don't light a fire to teach them what a fire drill actually looks or smells like, I don't think we have to have pretend shooters or pretend victims. Is there anything you guys would add to that briefly?
Yeah, I also want to just add that, as you say, in military, I completely thank you for your service. They don't have the capability that we do where we can comprehend what is happening. So we're putting, especially in elementary school, we're putting these children in places that they can't process. And I would just like to emphasize that when you are doing a fire drill, it's completely different than when there's an active shooter. But active shooter is a lot more intimidating. And when you're locking down into a room, it's dark. That is a lot different than a fire drill. So mentally, it's a lot more on a child.
Okay, Senator Simonetti.
Thank you for the bill. Just to clarify, in section D, it talks about drills or training may not include loud sounds, live exercise, role playing, and I get that. And it says, or similar activities basically that may cause trauma for the students. So I'm just trying to, your intent of the scope of that, is that just related to other type of sounds or role playing, or is that more scope than that? That somebody may have trauma with a training, and would that ban it for the school, or would work with the principal to say that person may be exempt from it?
Thank you, Senator Simon Ayer, and maybe MSCA wants to speak to that as well. But the bill starts off with talking about learning best practices from national studies, and that every year there will be a reevaluation and updates. So when I said that this isn't going to tell all of our 24 jurisdictions exactly the way they must do it, or the frequency with which these drills must be held, it just says, here's what you can't do, because it causes suicidal ideation, it causes post-traumatic stress disorder, it causes mental instability in our kids, and at all ages. We're talking about ages 3, 4, 5, on up through 12th grade. Nico, did you want to add something?
Yeah, I'd also like to add something. Even, within high school, when we are in these dark rooms and we hear even just the rattling of the door, it puts you in that same situation. And so, of course, it would be up to the counties to decide how this is implemented, and that's the way a good law should be. But, when you have those loud sounds or you have that rattling, that's scary. That's something that you're there, you're thinking that's what a real shooter would do. And then you have to sit with that and you have to process that, within yourself without mental health supports. And so I think that's, something that this bill is really trying to address.
Okay. So practically, if I could, who would determine the similar activities? Would that be the locals? Would that be the center? Would that be the best practices? Who's making that determination?
So I would add that right now we don't really have conclusive evidence on the value and impact of active shooter drills or trainings. And so that's part of what this bill wants to address, right? When we get more of that information, I think there will be some better guidance for LEAs, for school administrators, and for the center, of course, that's collecting this data on how to implement these best. That said, we do have data on the impact to students with overly realistic drills. And
I understand that part of the testimony. But my question was, who makes this determination?
I think that would depend on the data that comes out of the center.
Okay, the center would determine the similar activities.
Ultimately, the 24 local school boards would work on implementation.
Yeah, I'm just trying to figure out who makes the decision on that.
Based on national data and studies, I think the local, duly elected local school boards would help figure out what works best in their local jurisdiction.
Okay, so
this is not prescriptive.
No, I understand.
Yeah.
But it would be the locals that would determine, like Anne Arundel County would determine that, and Frederick County may determine something. It wouldn't be
Correct.
the center saying for it. Okay.
Correct.
Thanks.
Okay, do we have any additional questions, this panel? Senator Kagan? Okay, thank you very much for your testimony. We do have some virtual witnesses we're going to bring into the discussion now. Zaria Nakvi, Woody Kessel. Well, actually, hold on a second here. We have sponsor panel for virtual witnesses. I apologize. Wait, let me just redo here. Who do we have in the queue? Are they part of this? Okay, I'm sorry. Okay, I think this is our sponsor panel. We do have some additional witnesses we're going to bring in. But first, before we go to the virtual, we do have some favorables that are still here actually in the audience. So why don't you all, I think you're released. Zaria Nakvi.
Mr. Chair, before I stood up, I just wanted to thank you for co-sponsoring it and this bill. And I thought that maybe some of the other advocates who are not going to testify might stand if that's okay with you.
Sure, if you're here in support of this bill, but you're not signed up to testify, you can stand up so we can see you. Okay, thank you. Thank you very much for coming down here today.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, going back to our witnesses, and we'll go to the virtual witnesses after we get done with our in-person witnesses. Zaria Nakvi, I see her there. Woody Kessel, is Woody Kessel here in the audience? Okay. Aspen Egan, is Aspen Egan here in the audience? Ken Schilling, is Ken Schilling here in the audience? Okay. Okay, so we're going to take your live testimony and then we're going to go to the virtual witnesses. The remainder of the witnesses for this bill are virtual. So why don't you tell us who you are, and you've got 2 minutes, okay?
Good afternoon, committee members and Chair Feldman. My name is Zaria Nakvi. I am a sophomore at Winston Churchill High School in Montgomery County, and I'm the student liaison to the Maryland School Safety Subcabinet. I'm here today representing the Maryland Youth Advisory Council in support of Senate Bill 432. Active shooter drills are a stark reminder of the potential dangers we face in our learning environment. Each time we participate in a drill, it reinforces the reality that our school could be the site of such a tragedy. One of the most distressing aspects is the lack of communication before, during, and after these events. Not knowing whether a drill is a practice or a real threat can be terrifying. It disrupts our sense of security, our ability to focus on our education, and our trust within our school administrators. The research mandated in this bill is crucial to ensure that the drills we conduct are not only effective in preparing us for potential threats, but also considerate of the emotional and mental impact on our students. Furthermore, the bill's requirement for local school systems to provide students with the annual schedule of active shooter safety drills allows families to have conversations about safety and emergency preparedness, which can help alleviate some of the anxiety surrounding these drills. For years now, I remember my friends panicking, calling their parents, or even crying during these drills. It has been proven that many students feel triggered by blindly going into these shooter drills without being informed beforehand. So our families have the right to know about the events before it takes place. I urge you to consider the voices of students I represent when making your decision. We are the ones who live through these drills, and our experiences should shape the policies that affect our safety and our well-being. Thank you.
Thank you. And as you may or may not know that the vice chair is a graduate of Winston Churchill High School, as are the Feldman children. So they all are a graduate of Winston Churchill High School.
Yes.
That said, any questions for our witness? Okay, thank you very much for coming down today. And that brings us to our final witnesses, two virtual witnesses, and I see them on the screen. We've got Beth Jarrett and Laura Mitchell. Maybe we'll start with I called Beth Jarrett first, so we'll start with you, Ms. Jarrett. You've got 2 minutes and you're signed up favorable, and then we're going to go to Laura Mitchell. You're signed up favorable with amendments, so you're slightly different. But Ms. Jarrett, why don't you lead off? Again, you're signed up straight favorable. 2 minutes.
Yes. Good afternoon, Chairman Feldman and committee members. My name is Beth Jarrett. I lived in Maryland all of my life. I currently live in Lutherville and have lived here for 9.5 years. I'm a mother of 3 Baltimore County Public School students, and today I'm speaking in support of Senate Bill 432 on behalf of the Free State PTA. Research from Everytown for Gun Safety concludes that there's almost no evidence confirming the value of active shooter drills for protecting people when shootings occur. Research does suggest, however, that active shooter drills are associated with increased rates of depression, stress and anxiety, and overall physiological health problems for students. These harmful effects have been found in children as young as 5 years old, up to high school, parents, and teachers. And as the mother of 3, I can attest to this from experience. Perhaps the most important part of the bill for me personally is the requirement that schools send home information on Maryland's firearm storage laws. In the U.S., firearms are the leading cause of death for children. 4.6 million children in the U.S. live in a household with at least one loaded and unlocked gun. The Secret Service has found that 3/4 of school shooters got their firearm from the home of a parent or close relative. Preventing access to guns is one of the keys to reducing gun violence. Last week at my 7-year-old's basketball game, I struck up a conversation with another parent, a dad of 2 kids, 7 and 5 years old. He told me he's a cardiologist and his kids go to a private school in Towson. When we started talking about gun storage, he looked me in the eye and said, "Oh, so keeping my gun in a shoebox in my closet isn't good enough?" Parents need to be informed. Parents need to be educated on the importance of secure gun storage. Let's get them the materials they need to understand the proper way to store their guns to keep children safe and without access to guns. The Free State PTA urges this committee to issue a favorable report on
Okay, since Ms. Mitchell's favorable with amendments, let's stick with Ms. Jarrett. Any questions for the witness? Sarah Hester, did you have a question?
I did. I was just trying to understand what you said. Did you say that there's no evidence that the trainings help?
There is little evidence. There's almost no evidence. So right now they can't really find any evidence saying that it's helping. It's more traumatizing, as other people have said, than helpful.
So are there other states that mandate do you know if there's other states that have this kind of mandate that we do the trainings, or is it just Maryland?
I do not know.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any additional questions for Ms. Jarrett? Okay, seeing none, we'll go to Laura Mitchell next, and that'll be our final witness. You're signed up favorable with amendments. So Ms. Mitchell, you've got 2 minutes to explain your position. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair Feldman, Vice Chair Kagan, and committee members. And thank you for bringing this bill forward. I'm Laura Mitchell. I'm the mother of 2 adult children and a teen grandchild in 11th grade. My youngest son and my granddaughter, both neurodivergent persons with significant trauma histories, for whom unexpected disruptions such as emergency drills have had significant consequences. It's for them that I'm here today to support this bill. The only amendment that I would request is that in addition to law enforcement being involved in the planning of this, is that a mental health professional is involved in planning these drills so that we can avoid the trauma that these can cause rather than trying to address it afterwards. My granddaughter has been diagnosed with autism at this point, among other things. But when she was in 4th grade, she was undiagnosed. I was in a building supporting the school PTA when there was a tornado warning that came through. So they all had to huddle in the hallway. And she was right across the hall from me, and I could see her. I could see her anxiety level raising. I could see, the noise was slightly louder than a general classroom as all the children were in the same hallway. And she started to cover her ears and to rock back and forth and to get very upset. Her wonderful teacher rubbed her back and calmed her down and helped her get through that. I wasn't able to get to her because of the restrictions of the drill. In 6th grade, early in her 6th grade year, I was again in the school in the media center with a book fair when an unannounced active shooter drill was called. They don't say that it's a drill. They just begin doing the process. They had to lock down in the media center in the dark corner and be silent and be still. That's really difficult for her on her best day. And here she was very overcome with anxiety. She again began covering her ears and rocking back and forth and really began to panic. Some of her classmates and her teacher tried to calm her, but they had to be quiet as well. These were not their normal activities. She ended up in the hospital from that. She was so traumatized that after 2 weeks of nightmares, she was in the hospital with suicidal ideation.
Okay, do you have some additional? I'll give you a little, some latitude here. It's important testimony. Did you any other additional thoughts before we?
Yes, the planning, having mental health professionals involved, particularly ones from the school that know the students and the staff who may have trouble with that process and that event, is critical in my opinion. I think that we also have a lot of students and people who are undiagnosed, so it may be worth knowing when these drills are approximately so they can prepare their students for it. And they can do things like tabletop exercises. Those students can still learn to do what to do in that situation without having to go through that activity and feel that trauma. We have to stop creating these adverse childhood events for our kids in order to try to protect them and train them.
Okay, thank you. Any questions for Ms. Mitchell? Senator Simoner.
I have a general question, and maybe the sponsor, I don't know if we could. I'm looking at the timeline, and it says that you have to work with a national group or higher education to analyze data. The bill goes into effect July 1st, and the report's due October 1st, so it's 3 months later. But the data they're collecting is a new requirement that says the schools have to start collecting data. And I'm just wondering how much data they're going to collect when a report is due 3 months later. So that could be something offline you can look, unless you have an answer.
Thank you. So the report due October 1st of 2024 is not the report based on drills and the kids' reactions. It's based on the national studies. And that information, the national research entity, I think some of that has already begun. And so the best practices is not necessarily, and then it's annual updates. So I'm happy to talk to you more if you think that they're, yeah.
You can take that offline, but yeah, so it's not that 3 months, not the extended. The data is actually apparently being accumulated as we speak. Okay, additional questions for the panel? Okay, seeing none, that concludes the bill hearing on Senate Bill 432, which brings us to the final bill of the day. And that is Senator Karen Lewis Young, Senate Bill 386. Senator, you've got 4 witnesses signed up. I'm going to bring them up if you don't mind.
Yes, please do.
Angelina Zhu, Leslie Monter, Madison Messick is Senator Karen Lewis. Oh, I think we have another virtual situation. Okay, and Abisola Ayola. Those are 4 in-person witnesses that are part of the sponsor panel for Senator Lewis Young. So Senator, you take it from here, Senate Bill 386.
Thank you very much, Chair Feldman, and good afternoon, colleagues. I have a bill about student voting rights, and it may follow a theme we've heard earlier today called Let's Keep Trying. So I want to give you a little bit of history, and then I'm going to tell you what the bill does and also explain why it's so important. In 2016, a young woman by the name of Sarah Perez approached me and spoke to me about the fact that she was the student member of the Frederick County Board of Education and very disappointed and frustrated that she had no voting rights. I was so impressed by Sarah. Articulate, intelligent, energetic, determined, very mature. And she tugged at my heart and challenged my mind. So that was the first time I brought forward a student member voting rights bill. I did it again 2 more times. I'm now here today for the 4th time, but doing it very differently because I think we all know the old adage about doing the same thing over again isn't necessarily going to get you different results. So I redesigned the bill, and instead of making it a local bill, I made it a statewide bill. And I want to talk a bit about why. And why I don't believe it necessarily violates local decision-making. I looked at the student member voting rights of the statewide Board of Education, and I thought, well, this student represents the entire state. Let's make that the baseline. Let's say that all student members at a minimum have that baseline, and then it's up to the local jurisdictions if they want to add on to that. So, for example, Anne Arundel County, that probably, no, they do have the most expansive voting rights in the state. It's their prerogative to do that. But at least we have a baseline. Why is this important? You're going to hear for the students. They make their own best case why this is so important. But the students I spoke to over the years were frustrated. I know in my own county, the students that spoke with me couldn't understand why they couldn't vote, but students, their colleagues in adjacent and contingent counties had voting rights and they didn't. And I had to tell them the honest truth that unfortunately this had become partisan. That's public information. So I want to talk a little bit about why I think it's very reasonable to have a statewide baseline. There's a provision of the Maryland Constitution that dates back to 1867, which transferred responsibility for the public school system to the General Assembly. So as I mentioned before, this bill would have a baseline, and that baseline says that the student member of the Board of Ed could vote on all issues except for dismissals or disciplinary actions or appeals regarding the powers and duties of the county superintendent. Why should we let our students have some voting rights? They are the most important stakeholders in our education. It also builds civic engagement and helps prepare students for the world that awaits them. One of the most important pillars of the blueprint is career and college readiness. If you have the responsibility of representing the entire student body, I would say that's aligned with college and career readiness. There are other things that students of this age can do. They can drive a car. They can enlist in the military at the age of 17. They can also own a rifle or a shotgun. So when it comes to responsibility, I think that having some voting rights would rank among those other responsibilities. I want to mention a court case that some of you may be aware of that occurred just a couple of years ago. It was actually August of 2022, where some parents challenged the constitutionality of student members having voting rights. Maryland's highest court ruled against that attempt to limit voting rights for the Howard County Board of Ed student member, citing the state constitution that I mentioned earlier. An individual that was a spokesman for the law firm that litigated the case, his name is Joseph Mead, senior counsel at the Institute of Constitutional Advocacy and Protection, said there's nothing unconstitutional with allowing students to have a limited voice in their education. He also said, we're training students to be future citizens and future voters. And this is a way that we can give them an opportunity to exercise that. So in closing, let's allow our student members of boards of education more than a token role. Let's allow them to be heard, not just seen. Let's find a path to demonstrate to our young people that we're willing to put their development and their future and their voice and representation ahead of local partisan politics. And with that, I'll pass it on to my very talented and capable panel.
Okay, why don't we just go down the aisle? So Senator, why don't you just hand the mic to your,
sure,
put that right close to your, and then everybody's going to get 2 minutes each. Okay, we'll go through and then we'll take some questions.
Go ahead. Okay. Good afternoon, Chairman Feldman and committee members. My name is Angelina Shi, and I'm a senior at Richard Montgomery High School in Montgomery County. Today, I'm speaking in favor of Senate Bill 386 on behalf of the Maryland Association of Student Councils, where I serve as president. Our lives as 21st century students are defined by hiding under desks for active shooter drills instead of earthquakes and administering Narcan to classmates suffering from opioid overdoses. In this manner, students provide a perspective and solutions that adults with decades of policy experience simply cannot replicate because they do not experience it themselves. To solve this bill grants strong voting rights to student members on boards of education or SMOBs, and thus legitimacy and importance. This creates a ripple effect that amplifies student leadership at all levels. Montgomery County is one of only 2 counties with almost full voting rights for our SMOB. And thanks to that power, students have advanced initiatives ranging from historic boundary analyses to system-wide anti-racism audits. Our current SMOB, Sameh Saeed, has been able to propose and pass an innovative school safety resolution for ID checks because he could wisely wield his power to vote. Students are the largest constituent population, and we treat our civic duty with a dignity rivaling that of our adult counterparts. In counties such as Montgomery County, student voter turnout is consistently 20% or more higher than general election turnout. And during our annual nominating convention for small candidates, hundreds of middle and high school delegates engage in productive debates on candidate policies, paralleling discussions like those happening in committee rooms like this. Just like the legislators in this room, our voice lies in our vote. And Senate Bill 386 represents enfranchisement for hundreds of thousands of worthy students across Maryland. We want the same thing as all of you, a quality education that reflects student needs. And who better to ask than the students themselves? Thank you, and we urge a favorable report for Senate Bill 386.
Okay, thank you. Let's go down the aisle, down the panel, down the table.
Good afternoon, Chairman Feldman and members of the committee. Today, I am speaking in favor of Senate Bill 386. My name is Leslie Monteer, and I'm a senior at North Carolina High School. For the past 2 years, I have served as the student member on the Caroline County Board of Education. Today, my views do not reflect that of my board. Student members of the Board of Education, or SMOBs, serve as valuable liaisons between young people and elected officials that directly influence their policy. Student members ensure that the voice of the students are able to be heard over the chorus of parents, educators, and taxpayers, exerting a weighty influence on our education. These other parties have strong tools for advocacy within the public school system, but by nature, the student's voice is less prominent. Of the 15 SMOBs that currently serve on the Eastern Shore, only 2 have some form of vote. Kent County, who only has a recorded opinion vote, and Queen Anne's, where 1 opinion vote is shared amongst a panel of 14 students. Even then, an opinion vote is not enough. A footnote at the end of a document instead of an actual vote trivializes the needs and disrespects the voices of the students. My position as SMOB is merely honorary. I'm privileged to represent the students of my county, and yet I have no real voice. It is disheartening when my peers come to me with the issues they face, and I have to tell them that I have no real avenue to advocate for them, and that my position effectively means nothing. Furthermore, it is unreasonable that for years, SMOBs on the Eastern Shore, a historically underrepresented region, have served without any form of voting rights, while their counterparts in Central Maryland have. It was just last year that the Kent County SMOB was even granted an opinion vote on their Board of Education. How many more years will the rest of the Eastern Shore have to wait? How many more years will students on the Eastern Shore remain voiceless and powerless? This bill provides students with the avenue needed to make an empowered student body a reality. Senate Bill 386 will empower Eastern Shore students with the voice they have been historically lacking. For these reasons, I support Senate Bill 386, and I respectfully urge a favorable report from the committee.
Okay, thank you. Okay.
Good afternoon, Chair Feldman and committee members. I want to thank all of you for this opportunity to speak. My name is Madison Messick. I'm from Kent County, and I'm a senior at Kent County High School, but I'm also the student member of the board. My views do not reflect that of my board. However, I am here in support of Senate Bill 386 and granting student members across the state certain voting rights. I am also one of the only student members on the Eastern Shore that is legally recognized by the state because of a bill passed just last year. Throughout my entire high school career, I have been a part of the Student Government Association and student advocacy. In the last 4 years, I have heard one repeated request from my peers, and that is to be heard. Many of us, myself included, are wondering why this bill would even be opposed, considering our state SMOB has just as many rights. I have watched many passionate students be advocates and provide priceless input on major decisions that heavily impact our students. Without these students' opinions, any decision made would have negatively altered our school. Board members may be some of the most qualified people to offer opinions about the school system. However, who knows more about a school other than a current student? Every student deserves a voice in their education, and a voting student member of the board would provide that. Students deserve and demand representation that values the student body and relates to our experiences. All we want is to be heard. A voting student member is essential to a successful school system. I urge you to vote in favor of Senate Bill 386 and grant student members across the state voting rights. Thank you all for this opportunity, and I'm here for any questions.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Chair Feldman and Vice Chair Keegan and the members of the committee. My name is Abisola Ayola, and I am the current student member on the Maryland State Board of Education. I bring greetings from the State Board leadership and am here today to discuss my experience and perspective as a student member on the State Board. Since 1985, the student member of the State Board of Education has served as a valuable voice on behalf of students throughout Maryland on critical decisions that impact the educational journey of both their current peers as well as the cohorts of students that will follow. The student member of the State Board has the opportunity to participate in nearly every aspect of educational governance, serves on committees, attends the executive sessions of the State Board, and assists in the selection and appointment of the state superintendent. I personally serve on 2 board committees and meet regularly with the parent and teacher members to discuss stakeholder engagement. I am able to contribute to these spaces by vocalizing student concerns and priorities, and my voting rights only affirm and uphold the belief that student voices are valued in decision-making. Student members of the State Board have been incredibly engaged with the critical work of the board and MSDE and have uplifted the impact on students with their voice on policy matters before the State Board. Most recently, I was able to cast an informed vote to pass the Science of Reading resolution and our new college and career readiness standard. My work and the work of local student board members demonstrate how crucial voting rights are to implementing the blueprint with integrity. As a former local student member as well, and now the state student member, I fully support the idea of expanding voting rights for student members. It is one thing to say that we value student voices, but it is even more powerful to affirm it in law by adding voting rights throughout Maryland without restricting the rights of students with a full vote. Expanding voting rights for student members is a crucial step in ensuring that Maryland continues to take strides in educational policy and produce the best citizens. Our students are going to be the ones sitting in these seats in the future, and it's so important that we affirm the rights of students and the student voice in Maryland through full voting rights for all students on boards. Thank you.
We've got some questions. We'll go around. We're going to go to Senator Augustine, then Vice Chair Kagan. Okay. Augustine, Gallion, Watson, Kagan. We're going to start with Senator Augustine.
Thank you, Chair Feldman. And I think that the last student actually went where I was going. I just wanted to say I'm just so impressed with you all. I mean, you all are just amazing. I really do look forward to you all being around here and serving in the state, like some of our colleagues, I think, who served in these roles and are now in the legislature. So I'm just really impressed. That's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Okay, Senator Gallion, then we'll go to Senator Watson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And my colleague kind of stole a little what I think probably we all want to say. Senator, very impressive panel. Very, very impressive. But I always kind of have some concerns when the state's coming in and overriding some local control and things. So that's what I kind of wanted to focus on. So my question, Senator, you know, if this was brought in previous years as a local Frederick bill, and this is coming from somebody that actually represents 2 counties, one of them has some student voting privileges, the other does not. What happened with the Frederick County bill? Why did that not pass? Or can you give some background on that? So now you're going, I understand why you're going this route, but I had thought that, you know, most times those local bills, if you have local support, go through. So can you just kind of fill me in on why the Frederick County local bill did not go through?
Well, some of us believe that by expanding voting rights as widely as we can is the best way to be a true participatory democracy. And our delegation did not all agree with that thought. And I think there was a part 2 of your question. The reason why I decided to make it statewide is I felt there ought to be some consistency. I mean, it's very difficult for these young people to understand why not in Frederick, but it's okay in Montgomery and in Howard. What's different about our county? And so I felt that we should at least have a minimum baseline and that it would be okay for the state to dictate that. And the compromise would be then the counties could all build on that. You could either keep that minimal baseline, or in the example of Anne Arundel or Montgomery or Howard or Prince George's, and that's only about half of them that have more expansive voting rights, you could build on those and grant far more. So I see this as a compromise.
Okay, Senator Watson.
Thank you for the bill, Senator. Your logic is very, very sound, and I appreciate it. However, I've had to live this. And, you know, I understand the way you framed it, but the bottom line, their responsibility is to graduate and graduate with the best grade point average that they can and go off onto the future and do great things. And I've seen school board members, because they're be unduly influenced by the political machinery that can happen and persuade young students while they're in school, take up their time, and I've seen their grades fail. I've seen this firsthand. In Prince George's County, we do not allow students to participate in collective bargaining. It is inherently political, with unions putting pressure on getting these students to vote the way they want. Does the state school board member have to deal with anything related to collective bargaining?
So I hear what you are saying, Senator, and I have not personally experienced any political pressure in my experience on the state board. We are very good about enabling our students to vote within their conscience and feel empowered through their vote. And I have not experienced any pressure. And I can speak for some of my local counterparts as well. Most of us are in the top of our classes. We maintain our GPAs, and especially our Anne Arundel's board member, he has full voting rights at the moment, remains at the top of his class as well. And we do not fall into the political the board should be nonpartisan, but we do not fall into any trouble in that sense. We keep it we focus on our students and representing that student voice and casting our vote the way we know best.
Do you do anything with collective bargaining? I think collective bargaining is something totally different than voting on what goes on in executive sessions, dismissals, all those types of things. I was going through the state website trying to find what the student member can vote on. And I just don't know if a student member at the state level deals with anything related to collective bargaining. I just think that is very, very challenging for a student whose number one priority is to graduate, to be caught up in sometimes can be very, very challenging circumstances when it comes to budgets and when it comes to organizations like the unions who are trying to sway people's opinion.
I want to comment on a few things you said. I have a list of every county and what the student member voting rights are. I'm happy to share that list with you. What I am trying to say is, let's build a baseline. And if everyone here is in agreement, or the majority of us are in agreement, that we should at least have some baseline that's consistent, the specifics are certainly negotiable. Now, I will respectively disagree with your statement that their basic responsibility is to graduate and move on. I think they have far greater responsibility than that. I think these young ladies have demonstrated that. They have a responsibility to be leaders, to be a voice, and many of them have executed that. And I think we have a responsibility to enable them to be the best that they can be, to give them the skills and the responsibility so that they can be leaders not only today, but tomorrow.
Okay, we're going to go to Vice Chair Kagan, then we'll go over to Senator Brooks.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was going to say one or two things, and now I want to speak to several things. First off, I was deeply involved in student government when I was in high school, and I used to say that I majored in extracurricular activities because I had a part-time job and I babysat. I worked at Sears. I was on this club, that club, a million other things, and I graduated, went to a great school, and I think that's part of how you develop leadership skills and relationships and all that, and confidence. So I trust that someone doesn't run for SMOB and take it seriously and do a good job if they're failing in a lot of other places. So thank you, Senator Lewis Young, for this bill. And thank you guys. You just did an extraordinary job. Leslie, I want to take issue with one thing that you said. You said my position means nothing. And I want to remind you that just because you don't have a vote in all things or in anything as a non-voting member, if this bill weren't to move or whatever that might look like. Congresswoman Eleanor Holmes Norton has served in Congress for decades as a non-voting member of Congress for the District of Columbia. And I assure you, she has a voice and a presence, and she provides constituent service and is a role model and can sponsor amendments and can do a lot. And so I just want to remind you that you are more powerful than you think you are. Just because you don't have a voice doesn't mean your presence isn't important. So, and with that, Angelina, all of you just did a great job, and thank you for being here. I look forward to working with Senator Lewis Young to support this bill and see if we can move it forward. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, Senator Brooks.
Thanks, Chair. Thanks, Senator, for the bill. I'm proud to say that Baltimore County is one of the counties that allow students to vote and participate. But there were three things that are precluded: that's hearings, collective bargaining, and school closing, reopening, and boundaries. Yeah, they were allowed to vote on the budget, but that means that they would have had to have taken a course in budgetary finance. Not a course, but it's like a small course, introductory to it, so that because the budget is a very important thing, and you want to make sure that you know exactly what you are voting on. So have any of you had that experience? Have any of you taken any budget courses so far, school board budget?
Yeah. So you're correct. The Baltimore County student member is currently the only student member that has to go through budget training as explicitly stated in law. I, as Howard County student member, I did not vote on budget. On the state board, I do. And we do receive training of a sort, but Baltimore County is the only county that it was explicitly stated in the law that they have to go through that training.
Do you know if the adult members of Board of Ed have to go through that training?
They sure do.
They do? Okay.
Yes.
Thanks.
Okay. Okay, any additional questions for the panel? Okay, thank you, Senator. We do have an assortment, a few other witnesses, a mix of favorable and favorable with amendments. So let me, on the in-person side of things, straight favorable, Michael Olson and Alexander Hussein Kale. Are you two here? Okay, why don't you come up? And then we have one virtual straight favorable, and then we have a couple of favorable with amendments. So again, Mr. Olson. We got two witnesses, so. And each of you are going to have 2 minutes. Who wants to start?
Good afternoon, Chairman Feldman and the committee members. I'm Michael Olson from Frederick County in District 4, and I'm here to speak in favor of Senate Bill 386. I am the president of the Frederick County Association of Student Councils, a student advocacy group in Frederick County. One of our main roles includes the election of our student member of the Board of Education. And just 2 years ago, 39% of our eligible students casted a vote, eligible students being middle and high schoolers. This year, we had 52% of our eligible students vote. With each year, students become more and more interested as they learn about the position, and they learn about the setbacks of the position and limits with voting. They are more interested in the changes that can be made and the possibilities behind it, despite Frederick still having an opinion vote. Frederick County students want our SMOB to have a vote that has an impact. Another interesting trend we see with the expanding voting rights of our SMOB is the increase of interest and student involvement that occurs not only in school policy, but in all fields of public policy. Expanding rights has a domino effect on the future voters of our state and establishes lifelong civic habits. When students can see the direct effect of their voices in policy that affect them, they are more likely to participate. As a student leader, I've often heard concerns as youth we lack maturity or expertise. I'm a senior this year. I've had 12 years of experience through our schools. Our SMOBs have had 12 years of experience in K through 12. They have learned a lot. And as you have heard from all the students who have testified today, not just on our bill, but maturity is a quality that shines through each one. Fundamentally, SMOBs are elected by their peers, and thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you. Sir?
Good afternoon, Chair Feldman, Vice Chair Kagan, and members of the Education, Energy, and Environmental Committee. My name is Alex Sossenkale, and I'm a legislative chair for the Maryland Youth Advisory Council. The inclusion of student voices in educational decision-making is not only beneficial, but essential for creating responsive learning environments. Senate Bill 386 recognizes an invaluable perspective that students bring to educational policies. Providing students with a powerful voice not only improves policy, but students' mental and physical state as well. A recent study analyzing 67 schools in Philadelphia showed that more powerful student voices correlated with improved engagement, competence, and overall feelings of belonging. Another study showed that students who felt their schools were more responsive to their concerns had better grades and attendance. In 1975, Anne Arundel County became the first local board in the nation to afford full voting rights to students. As a leader in education, Maryland has the responsibility to improve it, just as Anne Arundel County did in 1975. A significant point of contention is the notion that youth are apathetic towards subject matters in civics and government. The reality is simple. 7 counties which allow binding votes, Anne Arundel, Baltimore, Charles, Howard, Montgomery, and more, are all demonstrating remarkable education improvement every single day. They rank among the highest in Maryland, and it's clear that we, the students, do have the knowledge to participate effectively in decisions which directly affect us. By supporting Senate Bill 386, the General Assembly can lead Maryland to champion a proven model of student engagement, providing youth with resources necessary to lead a brighter, more intelligent, and inclusive future. As demonstrated through bodies like the Maryland Youth Advisory Council, young people are not apathetic to the decisions made by our adult leaders. We do have the knowledge to participate politically, and for these reasons, the Council adamantly supports Senate Bill 386 and respectfully requests a favorable report from the committee. We thank you for your time and consideration of our position today.
Okay, thank you. Senator Augustine.
Thank you, Chair Feldman. I just want to reiterate, like, you guys are wonderful. Also, I didn't get a chance to say it earlier, but I think, is Ms. Babb still here? You are. You did an awesome job too. So you guys did really great. I'm very proud of all of you. Thank you.
Okay, Vice Chair Kagan.
Thank you. To distinguish myself from the good senator from District 47, 2 things. One, I forgot to say that when I was in high school, I got to vote for Montgomery County's very first SMOB. And that was a billion years ago now. But so I have always supported a student member on the Board of Education. And our SMOB is the current chair of Montgomery County's Board of Elections. Still very active attorney, awesome. And Alex, do you want to identify yourself with your past hat on that you used to wear?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much. So last year in the 2023 General Assembly session, I served as a student page representing Anne Arundel County. And to kind of lend a hand to how students are able to engage in government, you know, these positions are sought after by so many students, and you really can only be in these positions if you have the knowledge and expertise to contribute to it. I think it really lends a hand that students not only want to participate in government, but they have the knowledge and expertise, as shown throughout history, that they can participate effectively.
You know, I should have said this about the Wooten student who was up here. Actually, a former SMOB from Montgomery County, Wooten High School, your high school, was ringing the bell at the New York Stock Exchange last August. A young man that I know well, it was constituent, went on, and again, he's done big things, and he's not even 30 years old. So it's really a pretty remarkable life story. But that said, okay, great job, guys. We do have one virtual witness. We're going to pull up here. Haley Wilderson is. Haley, you there? Okay, we see you, and you've got 2 minutes, and you're signed up straight favorable.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Chair Feldman, Vice Chair Kagan, and esteemed committee members. My name is Haley Wilderson, and I'm a high school senior from Garrett County. Maryland has been a pioneer for the inclusion of student members on the boards of education, and even has the nation's only student member with full unrestricted voting rights. The role of the student member of the board, or SMOB, is a vital one that gives a voice to the most important stakeholders in education, our students. Yet for many of the student members across our state, restricted voting rights, or for most of us, many voting rights at all, completely undermine their ability to effectively advocate for a student perspective. I'm the student member of the Garrett County Board of Education, and this barrier is one that I know all too well. I first want to affirm that I'm speaking here today not officially on a board business, but in a personal capacity to my experience as a student member. Currently, I cannot attend any executive session and have no voting rights. Especially in smaller counties like my own, it is such a harmful choice to not attend executive session, as many key decisions are facilitated in which the student voice is left disregarded and unheard. The SMOBs across the state are in constant contact with each other to discuss best practices to present the student voice, with or without voting rights. Yet through all of our unique challenges, we all have a united front. That universal voting rights for all Maryland SMOBs is a crucial step in student advocacy. As a student member of the board, I've seen firsthand how student concerns can often be misrepresented or underheard whenever they cannot be properly demonstrated with a vote. As we enter an evolving era of education, especially with the blueprint for Maryland's future and beyond, the student perspective must not only be considered, but prioritized. And I believe this bill enables us to do just that. I encourage each of you to vote favorably for Bill 386. Thank you.
Okay, any questions for our witness, our virtual witness? Okay, seeing none, thank you very much for your testimony. The only witnesses left, we do have 3 in-person witnesses signed up favorable with amendments. I'm going to call their names. I'm not sure if they're here. These are the final witnesses of the day. Mara Bab, come on up. Lamia Ayez and Jordan Hayes. Those are our final witnesses on this bill and for the day. I said the gentleman, the SMOB from Wooten High School was at the ringing. I forgot to mention he took a company public on the new end last year, and so it's really a great story. Okay, who wants to lead off?
I can start. Good afternoon again. I am Mara Bab, and I'm a student from Anne Arundel County. On behalf of the Chesapeake Regional Association of Student Councils, or CRASC, and the CRASC legislative team, I am testifying in support of certain amendments on SB 386. CRASC respectfully proposes to strike any sections of this bill in which the additions restrict existing voting rights of student members on the board, or SMOBs, in certain counties or cities, including Anne Arundel County, Baltimore City, Montgomery County, and Prince George's County. CRASC is in strong support of the intent of this bill to expand the voting rights of SMOBs. Anne Arundel County's student member on the Board of Education has had full voting rights since 1975 to make educated decisions on all matters before the board. Through this privilege as a student leader, the Anne Arundel County SMOB stands out amongst others in Maryland as a representation of youth empowerment and resolve to hold the same rank on paper and in practice as adult members on the board. This bill grants rights that many county SMOBs would otherwise be deprived of on a systematic level. However, this conversely sets a baseline that takes away the established rights of multiple student members on the board, including in Anne Arundel and Montgomery County. CRASC proposes to adjust the language of this bill without changing the intent of expanding voting rights for SMOBs and set a flexible baseline on the established rights of the county or city. These expanded voting rights will build a mutual trust between student and adult members, creating a culture of equality and excellence akin to the Anne Arundel County Board of Education. Accordingly, CRASC reports a favorable with amendments committee report on SB 386. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, why don't you go next?
Good evening, Chair Feldman, Vice Chair Kagan, and members of the Education, Energy, and Environment Committee. My name is Lamia Ayaz. I'm a senior at Howard High School in Ellicott City, and I currently serve as the 36th student member of the Howard County Board of Education, where I have partial voting rights and the privilege and honor of representing the 57,000 students in my county. Among the things I cannot vote on include the budget and various personnel issues. Today, I am testifying as an individual and would like to voice some of my personal experiences. My responsibility is not one that I take lightly. Even for matters that I cannot vote on, I take time to ensure that I am informed, reading all the material, asking questions, and collecting student feedback. For instance, although I cannot vote on the budget, I have analyzed the 600+ page document, attended our budget work sessions and public hearings, asked questions, and even held a student budget town hall just last night, where I presented information about the budget and helped students give feedback to the Board of Education. But despite the work I have done and the perspectives I have gained, my influence is limited because I do not have a vote on the budget. Student members bring a unique strength to the table. The perspective of someone who lives the reality that we create in the boardroom every single day. They express the voice of the students. The constituents school boards are made to serve, and they do so with optimism and passion. But I think that this optimism and passion is often incorrectly conflated with imprudence or impulsivity. Having spent time with my fellow student board members, I think that this could not be farther from the truth. I see the dedication that my fellow student board members demonstrate in all areas up for discussion at the board, the student expertise and the many hours they devote to their roles. And I ask that you ensure that our voting rights reflect that. It is areas like the budget, for example, that most impact students in their day-to-day life. Expanding voting rights will ensure that future SMOBs can better represent student voice in these critical areas. I do, however, want to also express that my fellow student board members who already have more voting rights than written into the bill should maintain those rights. Thank you for your time.
Okay, thank you, which brings us to our final witness of the day. Tell us who you are.
Right. Good afternoon. My name is Jordan Hayes, and it is my pleasure to come before you and offer testimony in favor with amendments to Senate Bill 386. With the addition of these proposed amendments, we will not infringe upon the already heightened SMOB voting rights in counties such as Montgomery, Anne Arundel, and Baltimore. Before I get into personal experience and reasons why this bill is imperative to the enhancement of student voice, I would like to state that I'm the current Calvert County student member on the Board of Education. However, I'm not speaking on behalf of the CCPS Board of Ed today. I'm speaking on behalf of myself and my experiences as a SMOB. Something I've been telling CCPS students since my election almost a year ago, and something I've heard my predecessor say on countless occasions, is that students are the biggest stakeholders in their education. As students, we are the ones experiencing the effects of the decisions made at the Board of Education level. As students, we are the ones being influenced the most by our education system. And as students, we are taught that our opinion matters, our voice matters, and we can affect change. We've been learning this since elementary school. This is our opportunity to put those teachings into practice. Because we have the student board member position, students are capable of influencing decisions in their education. Keyword, influencing. In very few counties in Maryland do students actually have a vote which does more than influence. It impacts. As a student enrolled in Calvert County Public Schools, I want to ensure my voice is being heard, represented, and acted upon when it comes down to my education. As the student member on the Calvert County Board of Education, I work tirelessly to be sure that all voices are being heard, represented, and acted upon. But in truth, without a vote, I can only ensure the students I represent my hard work, not my full, unwavering support via vote. To put it plainly, the point of this education system we are all currently or previously have been enrolled in is to prepare us for the quote-unquote real world. It lays a strong foundation of skills, ideas, and plans for us to take to the next steps towards our future. As the ones benefiting from the successes and being put at severe disadvantages from the losses, it is only right and it is only truly representative for the student board member in each Maryland local education agency to have the right to vote. I urge, as first a student and secondly a board member, a favorable report with amendments on the Senate Bill 386. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Impressive group, Senator Washington.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I do want to ask you a question because it's not just on this matter, but on a number of matters, but maybe you can give us some insight. It seems that, or maybe I should ask you, the assumption that you are not able to make decisions and that by us not allowing you to make the tough decisions, that we are protecting you some kind of way. And that by protecting you from the harsh realities, that's our job as adults, right? To protect children from the harsh realities. I wonder if you could just respond to that, and understanding that there may in fact be some people that are thinking that by not allowing you to vote or not allowing you to do certain things. But again, I support it, but I do think some of my colleagues believe that it's in your best interest to not be involved in adult matters because that protects you. So if you could respond to that.
You can go ahead.
All of you can.
Oh, okay. Well, then, thank you so much for the question. And I think that that is definitely coming from a good place when we're saying that we want to protect our student board members. But I think as soon as you enter the public sphere, as I'm sure you all know, there is an aspect of you are, exposed to things. And the truth is that the real world is not always easy, and that there are going to be difficult decisions that you have to make. And so to say that it is respectfully in our best interest to avoid those hard things is not preparing our students to be college and career ready, to prepare for a life of service and a life of passion. And so I think that while that may come from a good place, allowing our students to express opinions on things that may not be easy we must let them express their opinions on things, even if they're not easy.
Okay, we're gonna go to the sponsor. Oh, I'm sorry.
I'll be quick with this. I
Okay,
know it's
sure.
been quite a long meeting at this point. I think it's important that, yes, we do protect our children and younger students from maybe the harsh realities that they might not yet be prepared for. But first, I'd like to highlight that the student board member is either a junior or senior. They're the closest to the real world that our students get. And then I'd like to follow that up by saying these tough and harsh decisions are affecting our students, regardless of if we want them to be a part of that or not. So by taking the student voice out of it, we're ignoring the fact that it is directly affecting our students.
Okay, we're gonna go to the sponsor and then we'll go to Senator Augustine. So Senator Lewis Young.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. This is a favorable with amendment panel. And I just want to make sure that you're aware that that amendment was submitted. It's what we call a clarifying amendment. The intent of the bill was to set a baseline and then leave it up to counties whether they wanted to expand on that baseline or retain existing abilities above and beyond that baseline. There was some confusion about the way the bill read, and I know some of you had some concerns that you thought it would actually step back your existing rights. So we did submit the amendment. Everybody has it in their backup, and we even put a hard copy down to make sure everyone saw it. But I wanted to assure you that that clarifying amendment has been submitted, and if you're not aware of it, you are now. Thank you.
Thank you for that clarification.
Okay, Senator Augustine.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Once again, I'll just say I'm just so impressed with you all. However, I also do have a question for you because you all have come in favorable with amendments, and what you have sort of revealed, I believe, is the choices that come with local control. So Senator Brooks mentioned that there was an additional requirement that there be a course on budgets and things like that. And that was something that works in Baltimore County. We have similar differences and changes in Prince George's County. And I will just share with you that generally speaking, the jurisdiction for this are the school systems. And so I generally will defer to the local control that they be able to do that. How do you all respond to that?
Go ahead. So in Anne Arundel County, we do have an onboarding process for not only our student members, but also for all of our members when they are elected or appointed onto the board. So they are made aware of all of the things that come with the budget, nutrition, doing like things that required for their position. So this would be covered in Anne Arundel County at least, and I assume it would be up to the decision of the local county if they want to do onboarding for not only their SMOB but other board members as well. So that was how Anne Arundel County has been impacted by that.
To add on, I did receive training when I was onboarded as well, and I'd be more than happy. I'd be thrilled to receive extensive budget training as well. I also want to emphasize that as student board members, we do go to professional development. We do go to workshops. We do try to improve our abilities as much as possible, even in the short term that we have. And I think the skills that we learn as student members will stay with us for the rest of our lives.
Oh, yeah, go on.
As the Calvert County member, I have a somewhat different experience from both of these counties. We don't have necessarily a training process. I didn't learn how to read the parts of the budget I've been given. I didn't learn how to read certain policies or bills that have come across my quote unquote desk. What I did receive was a sort of relationship training through May, where I learned how to build up certain relationships with people that maybe I haven't had contact with before, how to show my presence on social media without crossing line, things like that. However, I think a training would be fantastic and incredibly beneficial. I would have loved to have learned how to read the budget much sooner than I did, but it took 1 or 2 confused meetings before I was able to sit down with a board member and say, hey, explain this to me pretty please. So I think a budget training would be absolutely fantastic, any form of training. And then there's another part to your question, wasn't there? I go to Patuxent High School in Lesby, Maryland. Oh, okay.
Is our Ellicott City, is this your senator right here? Senator Katie Fry Hester? Okay, that's good. Okay, well, folks, I think that's the end of our testimony, and that concludes the bill hearing on Senate Bill, let me get my little reading glasses here. Yes, Senate Bill 386, and that concludes our work for today.